Hello friend, and welcome to the Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're drifting gently into the dreamy mystery of sudden bursts of rain. Those quiet, surprising moments when the sky seems to inhale, and then softly exhale in silver threads of water. 1 minute, the air is still. The next, droplets are tapping at windows, pattering on rooftops, stitching delicate patterns into puddles below. Maybe your day has been long. Maybe your thoughts are still moving, like clouds not quite ready to settle. If so, you're in the right place. The rhythm of raindrops has a way of steadying everything, a natural metronome, calming and consistent, as ancient as the oceans themselves. What time is it for you right now? Is it late evening, when the world grows hushed, or the deep quiet hours when even the wind seems to whisper? If you enjoy these slow, peaceful journeys through weather and wonder, feel free to like or subscribe. Your support helps other sleepy travelers find their way to this gentle corner of the atmosphere. For now, you can snuggle in. Let your body grow heavy and warm. There's nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to plan, only the soft story of rain. Let's begin. We begin with the gentle arrival of an unexpected rainburst. At first, there is almost nothing to notice. The evening may feel ordinary. The air rests softly against your skin. The horizon glows in fading light, and the clouds above seem quiet, unhurried. And yet, high above, something delicate has been unfolding for hours, sometimes even longer. What feels like a surprise is, in truth, the result of long, invisible preparations. Far overhead, warm air has been rising in slow, spiraling currents. It drifts upward because warm air is lighter than the cooler air surrounding it. As it climbs, it expands and cools. Cooling allows invisible water vapor, the transparent moisture always present in the atmosphere, to gather itself into tiny droplets. These droplets cluster together, forming clouds. At first, the clouds may appear soft and harmless, like brushed cotton stretched thin across the sky. But inside them, movement continues. Updrafts, gentle upward rivers of air, carry more moisture into their growing towers. The droplets collide, merge, and grow heavier. Ice crystals may form in the chillier heights, joining the quiet choreography of condensation. From the ground, you might simply notice the air feels heavy. Perhaps the breeze softens. Perhaps the scent of humidity deepens, that faint metallic sweetness that sometimes precedes rain. These are the sky's quiet signals. Clouds building tension high above. Air heavy with potential. Meteorologists call this atmospheric instability. It's a tender imbalance. Warm air below, cooler air above. Nature, always seeking harmony, allows energy to move upward. The cloud becomes a vertical landscape, rising, billowing, quietly accumulating water. And then, at a certain moment, gravity begins to speak more clearly. The droplets inside the cloud have grown large enough that rising air can no longer hold them suspended. They begin to fall. At first, only a few, then more. As they descend, they gather smaller droplets, becoming fuller, rounder, more confident in their downward path. To someone beneath, it may feel sudden, a soft tapping, a scattering of cool touches on warm pavement, the sound of leaves receiving their silver visitors. The sky opens, not in drama, not in anger, but in release, like a breath that has been held and gently let go. This is the whisper before the rainfall, not a warning, not a threat, simply a culmination. The atmosphere has completed its quiet work. Even in a sudden rainburst, nothing is truly abrupt in the language of physics. The preparation has been patient. The ingredients, moisture, lift, cooling, condensation have been assembling in calm cooperation. What surprises us is often only the final note of a long, silent symphony. And as the rain falls, you might imagine the journey of each drop, evaporated days ago from ocean or lake, carried invisibly through the sky, lifted, cooled, gathered, and now returned to Earth in a shimmering descent. Tonight, we uncover the sky's quiet signals that precede sudden rainfall. Signals not of urgency, but of readiness. Signals not of disruption, but of completion. The next time rain arrives without warning, perhaps you'll feel the hidden hours behind it. The rising air, the building clouds, the gentle physics unfolding above your roof. For now, let that knowing settle softly. The sky is always preparing something, and when it finally speaks, it often does so in whispers of rain. In this chapter, we softly define the term. A sudden rainburst, sometimes called a microburst when associated with strong downdrafts, is not simply a heavy shower. It is a brief, concentrated release of rain formed by specific atmospheric conditions. A compact event, focused, intense for a short while, and then, often just as quickly, it passes. Like a sigh released all at once, it transforms the sky into a gentle waterfall. To understand it, we return to the cloud. Within tall clouds, especially those that grow vertically into what meteorologists call cumulonimbus, there are powerful internal currents. Warm air rises through the center. Higher up, droplets freeze into tiny ice particles. Collisions occur. Water droplets grow larger. Some melt again as they fall through warmer layers. But a rainburst involves something more specific. Inside the cloud, precipitation can accumulate rapidly. Sometimes, the air beneath the cloud becomes cooler than the air around it due to evaporation. When falling rain evaporates slightly on its way down, it cools the surrounding air. Cooler air is denser, and dense air sinks. This sinking air forms a downdraft, a downward column of air carrying rain with it. When that downdraft reaches the ground, it spreads outward in all directions, like water poured onto a flat surface. For a brief moment, rainfall can intensify dramatically in one localized area. The rain feels sudden, concentrated, almost vertical in its determination. And yet, it is simply gravity and temperature working together. Atmospheric instability provides the lift. Moisture provides the material. Cooling provides the descent. A microburst, in meteorological language, specifically refers to the strong downdraft component, the focused column of descending air that accelerates toward the ground. But tonight, we hold the image gently, not as something forceful, but as something precise, a localized release of accumulated rain and cooled air. It does not last long, often only minutes. Rain falls heavily, like a curtain briefly drawn across the world. Surfaces darken, the scent of petrichor, that earthy fragrance released when rain meets dry soil, rises softly. Then, gradually, the intensity eases. The downdraft loses strength. The cloud continues drifting. From above, the atmosphere remains vast and calm. These bursts are reminders that weather is layered. What we experience at ground level is only the final chapter of processes unfolding thousands of feet above us. A sudden rainburst is not chaos. It is concentration, a brief alignment of lift, moisture, and cooling air. And when we understand it this way, the surprise becomes softer. The sky has not changed its mind. It has simply completed a cycle more quickly than we expected. Like breath, like release, like a cloud exhaling. Tonight, as you rest, you might imagine the vertical pathways of air, rising invisibly, descending gently, weaving their quiet patterns through the atmosphere. Each rainburst is a moment in that larger tapestry, brief, focused, complete. And always, after the release, the sky returns to stillness. Rain often begins with rising air. Most of the time, that rising happens quietly. Sunlight warms the ground warms the air just above it, and that warmed air, now slightly lighter than its surroundings, begins to drift upward. It does not rush, it simply lifts, as if carried by an unseen hand. But sometimes, the lift becomes stronger. When air rises quickly and vertically, it can lead to towering clouds and sudden precipitation. The motion is called convection, a word that sounds technical, yet describes something beautifully simple. Warm air rises, cool air sinks. The atmosphere, like water in a gently heated pot, circulates in slow, continuous motion. Convection is the invisible elevator of the atmosphere. Imagine standing in a sunlit field. The earth beneath you has absorbed warmth throughout the day. Patches of ground heat unevenly. Darker soil warms faster than grass. Pavement faster than trees. These tiny differences create pockets of warmer air. When one of these pockets becomes buoyant enough, it begins to rise in a column. As it lifts, it cools. Cooling allows water vapor to condense into droplets. A small cumulus cloud forms, soft, bright, and cotton-like against the blue. If the rising continues steadily, the cloud remains modest. But if the upward motion strengthens, perhaps because the air aloft is much cooler than the air below, the rising column accelerates. The temperature contrast fuels the lift. The cloud stretches higher. It builds vertically instead of spreading wide. Inside the cloud, the upward current carries moisture ever higher. Droplets form, collide, grow. Higher still, temperatures drop below freezing. Ice crystals join the dance. Tiny particles circulate up and down within the cloud's internal currents, growing with each pass. From the ground, it appears as a towering white sculpture, edges glowing in sunlight. It seems peaceful, and it is. Even when air rises quickly, there is no urgency in the physics. There is only response. Warm air responds to buoyancy. Moisture responds to cooling. Gravity waits patiently below. As the cloud grows taller, the droplets inside become heavier. Updrafts continue to support them until they no longer can. When gravity finally outweighs lift, precipitation begins. What felt like a sudden rainfall is simply the final act of vertical motion that began far below, warmed by sunlight and shaped by temperature differences. Convection is not rare. It happens every day in small and large ways. It is responsible for many of the world's showers, especially those that bloom in the afternoon after hours of heating. Air that rises too fast is not misbehaving. It is following gradients, responding to imbalance with movement. And when you think of it that way, rain feels less like interruption and more like completion. The invisible elevator rises, moisture gathers, clouds stretch tall, and eventually the sky returns what it has carefully lifted. Tonight, as you rest, you might imagine those vertical rivers of air rising gently into cooler layers, carrying warmth upward, weaving quiet architecture above you. The next time rain falls unexpectedly, perhaps, you will picture the warm earth beneath it, the rising currents, the patient physics unfolding long before the first drop touched the ground, all beginning with air, simply rising. We'll float now through the soft edges of cumulus clouds. They begin so delicately, small clusters of white drifting in an open sky. Formed by rising air and cooling vapor, they are collections of countless droplets suspended together. From below, they look weightless, almost permanent, but every cloud is temporary, even in its quiet beauty. As they gather moisture, their story deepens. Within a cumulus cloud, tiny droplets are constantly forming and reforming. Water vapor condenses onto microscopic particles, specks of dust or salt, too small to see. Each droplet is light enough to remain suspended by gentle upward air currents. But clouds are not static. They are alive with motion. Air continues to rise into them, delivering more moisture. Droplets collide and merge, becoming larger. In taller clouds, ice crystals may form in colder regions near the top. These crystals can attract surrounding vapor, growing slowly as they drift. The cloud appears serene from a distance. Sunlight softens its contours. Shadows give it dimension. But inside, countless interactions unfold. Subtle collisions, quiet growth. There comes a moment when the droplets become too heavy for the rising air to support. The updraft weakens. Gravity grows persuasive. And so, the cloud lets go. It is not dramatic. It's a quiet surrender, a natural release. Droplets begin to fall, at first gently, then more steadily. As they descend, they may merge with other droplets, becoming fuller. If they pass through cooler air, they may change form. If they pass through warmer layers, they may melt. Each drop adjusts to the layers it travels through. From below, rain begins as a soft tapping, barely noticeable. Then perhaps a steadier rhythm. Leaves glisten, pavement darkens. The cloud above lightens as it empties some of its gathered moisture. A cloud that cannot hold on is not failing. It is completing its purpose. Clouds are part of the water cycle, a continuous exchange between earth and sky. Water evaporates from oceans, lakes, soil, and even from leaves. It rises invisibly. It gathers, it condenses, and eventually it returns. The bursting of a cloud is not an explosion. It is a release of balance restored. When enough droplets accumulate, the cloud becomes precipitation efficient. That is the scientific phrasing. But tonight, we can think of it more softly. The cloud has reached its carrying capacity, and so it shares. After rainfall, the cloud often shrinks. Its bright edges soften. It may dissolve entirely, leaving behind only blue sky and a faint scent of moisture in the air. In this way, clouds teach a gentle rhythm: gather, hold, release. There is no strain in it, no resistance, only cycles. As you rest tonight, imagine drifting through the quiet interior of a cumulus cloud. Cool air, suspended, droplets, sunlight filtering through crystalline edges, and then the gentle letting go. Not dramatic, not urgent, simply gravity and generosity meeting in soft agreement. Clouds that can't hold on are not breaking. They are returning what they lovingly carried. Inside clouds, gentle air moves in all directions. From the ground, clouds may look still, like soft paintings suspended in the sky. But within them, the atmosphere is always in motion, flowing, lifting, sinking, circling. It is not chaotic. It is simply alive, like slow currents beneath the surface of the sea. Updrafts build the storm, downdrafts release it. An updraft is rising air, air that has become warm enough or buoyant enough to lift upward through the atmosphere. It begins near the surface, where sunlight warms the land, or where warm air is pushed upward by wind meeting a hill or coastline. As the air rises, it cools, and when it cools enough, invisible water vapor condenses into tiny droplets. This is how clouds are born, but the cloud is not a fixed shape. It grows as long as the updraft continues feeding it. The rising air acts like an elevator, carrying moisture upward into colder layers, allowing the cloud to expand vertically. In tall clouds, especially cumulonimbus clouds, these updrafts can be steady and persistent, lifting droplets higher and higher. Inside these clouds, droplets collide and merge. Some freeze into ice crystals. Some melt again as they fall through warmer levels. The cloud becomes a layered world of shifting temperatures and suspended water. And all of it depends on movement. But clouds are not built only by rising air. They are also shaped by air that sinks. Downdrafts are the downward pathways, air descending back toward the ground. Sometimes downdrafts form because rain begins falling through dry air. As raindrops evaporate slightly on their way down, they cool the surrounding air. Cool air becomes denser. Dense air sinks. And so, the downdraft strengthens. This downward current can carry rain with it, delivering precipitation quickly and suddenly. You might imagine it like this. The updraft is the cloud inhaling. The downdraft is the cloud exhaling. When the balance shifts, when the downdraft grows stronger than the updraft, rain can intensify rapidly. The cloud's stored moisture is no longer held aloft. It is released, guided downward by cooler, heavier air. This is one of the reasons a rainburst can feel so unexpected. One moment, the cloud seems calm, simply drifting. The next, it begins to pour. Not because the sky has changed its mind, but because the internal motion has shifted. Updrafts and downdrafts are always interacting. In some clouds, they exist side by side. Rising columns of air feed the cloud's growth, while sinking air nearby begins the process of release. The cloud becomes a quiet conversation between lift and fall, between holding and letting go. Meteorologists sometimes describe this as the life cycle of a convective cell. It begins with growth, fueled by updrafts. It matures as precipitation forms. Then it decays as downdrafts dominate, and the cloud loses its energy source. But tonight, we can think of it more gently. A cloud is like a slow-breathing creature of vapor and wind. It rises, it expands, it gathers, and then it settles, releasing what it has carried. When a downdraft strengthens suddenly, rainfall can arrive in a concentrated burst. The rain may feel heavy, direct, almost immediate. But it is simply the cloud's internal air currents guiding water downward. We'll drift between these airy elevators and see how a single shift can cause a sudden burst of rain. And as you rest, you might picture those invisible motions overhead, air lifting like a slow staircase, air sinking like a gentle waterfall. Nothing hurried, nothing harsh, only the quiet mechanics of the sky, upward, downward, building, releasing. And in between, the soft sound of rain arriving, exactly when the atmosphere is ready. Some rain is born not from towering storms, but from warm clouds alone. Not every rainfall requires thunderheads reaching into the upper atmosphere. Not every shower needs ice crystals or dramatic heights. Sometimes, rain forms quietly in clouds that remain entirely above freezing. Clouds made only of liquid droplets, floating in gentle layers of warm air. This is known as the warm rain process. It is one of the simplest and most peaceful ways rain can form, and it often happens in tropical regions, coastal climates, or any place where the air is moist and temperatures stay mild through the cloud's depth. In these warm clouds, droplets begin very small, microscopic beads of water clinging to tiny particles in the air. These particles, called condensation nuclei, might be salt from the ocean, dust from the land, or even pollen drifting on a breeze. Water vapor condenses onto them, creating droplets so light they can remain suspended for a long time. At first, the droplets are almost identical in size. They float together like a soft mist, but nature rarely stays perfectly even. Some droplets grow slightly faster than others, either because they formed earlier or because they encountered more vapor. And this small difference changes everything. Larger droplets begin to fall faster than smaller ones. As they drift downward through the cloud, they collide with droplets below them. Many collisions are gentle. Some droplets bounce apart, but often they merge, becoming one larger drop. This is called collision coalescence. It is a slow and steady process, like snowflakes gathering weight in silence, or like beads of dew rolling together on a leaf. Each collision adds a little more mass, a little more momentum. The droplet grows. As it grows, it falls slightly faster, making it more likely to collide with other droplets. And so, the process accelerates naturally, without urgency. It is simply physics guiding water into a form heavy enough to return to Earth. Eventually, the droplet becomes a raindrop, not because it was forced, not because the cloud broke apart, but because gravity patiently waited until the drop was ready. When the raindrop falls from a warm cloud, it often feels softer than storm rain. The drops may be smaller, the rhythm may be steadier. The sound may resemble a gentle hiss or a whispering tap. Warm rain can fall from low grey clouds that stretch across the sky like a blanket. It can arrive without wind, without lightning, without any dramatic shift in the atmosphere. Sometimes it begins almost unnoticed, until you realize the world has quietly become wet. We'll explore how tiny droplets merge into larger ones, gently, persistently, until gravity calls them home. This kind of rain is a reminder that the sky does not always need extremes to create beauty. Even without towering storms, the atmosphere can complete its cycle. Warm rain is often linked to stratiform clouds, layered clouds that cover wide areas. These clouds do not build upward as aggressively as convective storms. Instead, they spread horizontally, drifting like soft fog lifted into the sky. Inside them, the droplets are always moving, always meeting, always combining. A million tiny encounters become one raindrop, and when it falls, it carries the quiet story of its formation. Vapor becoming liquid, liquid becoming heavier, heaviness becoming motion. Tonight, as you rest, imagine those warm clouds above you. Not tall and dramatic, but wide and calm, a ceiling of softness. Inside, droplets slowly joining together like whispered agreements. And then, without fuss, the rain begins. A gentle return, a slow descent, a soft homecoming. Not every rainburst needs a towering storm. Sometimes, rain is simply the cloud's quiet way of letting go. High above, in colder clouds, ice crystals grow, merge, and fall. Far above the level where birds glide and commercial planes leave pale lines across the sky, the air becomes thinner and much colder. In these upper regions of tall clouds, temperatures often drop well below freezing. And yet, even here, water continues its quiet work. In these colder clouds, droplets do not always remain liquid. Instead, they transform. Tiny particles, perhaps a grain of dust lifted from distant soil, or a speck of salt carried inland from the sea, float invisibly in the air. Around these microscopic surfaces, water vapor begins to arrange itself into delicate geometric patterns. Instead of condensing into liquid first, the vapor deposits directly into ice. This is the beginning of an ice crystal. At first, the crystal is impossibly small, shaped by the molecular structure of water itself. Six-sided symmetry emerges naturally, forming the faint beginnings of what, under the right conditions, could become a snowflake. Inside the cloud, countless crystals drift in gentle suspension, each one unique, each one forming in quiet stillness. We drift softly through this frosty ballet. Cloud interior is not silent, but its movements are slow and continuous. Updrafts lift crystals upward, downdrafts ease them downward. As the crystals move, they encounter supercooled water droplets, tiny beads of liquid that remain unfrozen despite the cold, because they lack a surface upon which to crystallize. When these droplets touch an ice crystal, they freeze instantly, adding to its mass. The crystal grows thicker, heavier, more substantial. Sometimes, crystals collide and cling together, forming soft clusters. Sometimes, they become rounded with layers of frozen droplets. As they grow heavier, gravity gently persuades them downward. They begin to fall through the cloud, tracing a slow descent. At first, they remain in cold air, maintaining their icy forms. But eventually, they pass into warmer layers below. And here, transformation begins again. The edges soften, the sharp geometry blurs. Ice becomes liquid. A crystal that formed in frigid silence melts into a raindrop before it reaches the ground. By the time it touches Earth, no one would know it was once frozen high above. This is the quiet journey from crystal to drop. Much of the rain that falls in temperate regions begins this way, not as liquid droplets colliding in warm clouds, but as ice particles forming in cold heights. Meteorologists call this the Bergeron process, a name for the gentle exchange between ice crystals and surrounding vapor that allows frozen particles to grow efficiently in mixed-phase clouds. But tonight, we can simply imagine the passage. Vapor becoming ice. Ice gathering weight. Ice melting into rain. It is a layered story, one that spans thousands of feet in vertical distance. What feels like a simple shower is often the final chapter of a high-altitude ballet of frost and thaw. When cold rain reaches your window, it may feel no different from warm rain, yet hidden within each drop may be a memory of crystalline beginnings. High above, it once sparkled in frozen air. It once drifted among fragile hexagons of light. It once balanced between solid and liquid. And then, warmed by its descent, it became a drop, round, clear, complete. As you rest tonight, imagine floating through those upper clouds, ice crystals forming softly around you, glinting faintly in filtered sunlight. A quiet snowfall within the cloud itself, unseen from below. And then the slow melting, the gentle transformation, the return to earth, from crystal to drop, from frost to rain, from height to home. Have you ever noticed how the first raindrops are often the largest? Before steady rain begins, there is often a pause, a thickness in the air, a quiet expectancy, and then a single drop lands, heavy, round, distinct enough to leave a dark circle on dry pavement. Then another, and another. These early drops are often larger than the ones that follow, and there is a gentle reason for this. Inside a developing cloud, droplets are constantly forming and merging. As moisture gathers, the largest droplets grow first. They have already experienced more collisions, more merging, more accumulation than the countless smaller droplets still suspended above. These larger drops are the first to overcome the upward support of the cloud's internal currents. Gravity calls them home sooner. In many rain events, especially those formed by convection. The earliest raindrops come from the cloud's lower region, where droplets have had time to combine and become heavy. When the updraft weakens, even slightly, these larger drops are the first to fall, and because they fall through still dry air beneath the cloud, they often remain intact and rounded. As more rain follows, something changes. The falling drops begin to interact with the air below. Some evaporate slightly. Some break apart into smaller droplets due to air resistance. Others collide with additional droplets on the way down. The rainfall becomes steadier, more uniform. But those first drops, they are pioneers. They fall through relatively undisturbed air, meeting little resistance from other falling drops. They arrive with weight and clarity. They leave bold marks. You can hear them individually, a spaced tapping, a measured rhythm. This early stage of rainfall is sometimes called splash onset. The ground is still dry. The pavement darkens in polka dot patterns. Leaves tremble with singular impacts. There is something deeply calming about this moment. The quiet build-up of water suddenly falls all at once, not in chaos, but in sequence. The cloud has reached a threshold. Its largest droplets are no longer supported. They descend first, announcing the beginning. As rainfall intensifies, more droplets of varying sizes join the descent. The pattern becomes denser. The sound blends into a continuous hush. The individual drops become less distinct. But those first drops remain memorable. They are rounder because larger drops flatten slightly as they fall, shaped by air pressure into soft hamburger bun forms rather than perfect spheres. Even this detail carries gentleness, rain shaped by the air it travels through. Meteorologists study droplet-sized distributions to understand rainfall intensity and cloud processes. Larger initial drops can indicate strong coalescence within the cloud or the early release of accumulated moisture. But from where you stand, perhaps at a window or beneath a tree, it simply feels like the sky testing its voice. One drop, a pause, another drop. Then, gradually, the steady rhythm begins. Tonight, as you settle into rest, imagine that first heavy drop landing on warm ground, the quiet circle it leaves behind, the scent rising gently as water meets dust. The first drops are always fat because they have waited the longest. They have gathered the most. They are ready first, and when they fall, they begin the story of rain, one rounded syllable at a time. Water resists falling until it can't. Inside a cloud, countless droplets floated, suspension, each one shaped by a quiet force called surface tension. Though invisible, this force gives water its rounded form. It is the reason droplets bead along a leaf, rather than flattening into nothing. It is the reason rain gathers into pearls on a window pane. Surface tension is the soft skin of water. On a molecular level, water molecules are drawn to one another. They cling together through tiny electrical attractions, forming bonds that are gentle but persistent. At the surface of a droplet, these molecules pull inward, creating a tension that minimizes surface area and shapes the droplet into something nearly spherical. Within a cloud, this tension helps droplets remain intact as they drift in rising air. They do not immediately break apart. They do not dissolve into mist. They hold together, round and cohesive, even as they collide with others. But surface tension is not the only force at work. Gravity waits patiently below. As droplets grow larger, through condensation or collision, their weight increases. The upward air currents inside the cloud may still support them for a time. surface tension continues to hold their shape, allowing them to merge with other droplets without fragmenting. And yet, there comes a moment when weight overcomes lift. When a droplet becomes heavy enough, gravity begins to pull it downward despite the upward currents. At first, the descent is slow. The droplet may wobble slightly as air resistance pushes against it. Surface tension reshapes it, keeping it cohesive even as it accelerates. Water resists falling until it can't. During a rainburst, many droplets reach this threshold almost together. The cloud has gathered moisture steadily, and droplet size has increased quietly within. Surface tension has allowed them to grow larger without breaking apart prematurely. But once gravity gains the upper hand, the release can feel sudden. A rainburst is born when a large number of droplets simultaneously exceed the balance between lift and weight. The cloud can no longer hold them aloft. The tension that once sustained their rounded forms now simply helps them fall intact. It is not a violent breaking, it is a tipping point. Surface tension also explains why raindrops do not shatter easily mid-air. Even when buffeted by wind or jostled by turbulence, droplets cling to themselves. Only when they grow too large, beyond a few millimeters in diameter, does air resistance stretch them into flatter shapes, sometimes causing them to divide into smaller drops. Even then, it is a gentle reshaping rather than a rupture. The science is delicate. Molecules holding hands, gravity offering invitation, air currents negotiating the balance. When you watch rain gather on a railing or trace slow paths down glass, you are witnessing surface tension in action. The same force that shaped droplets in the cloud continues guiding them here on Earth. Tonight, we explore how the surface tension of droplets builds until gravity wins. But wins is too dramatic a word. Gravity does not conquer, it completes. The droplet has grown as much as it can within the cloud's embrace. Surface tension has kept it whole. Updrafts have held it aloft. But now the balance shifts, and so the drop falls. From vapor to bead, from bead to rain, from suspension to descent. Surface tension is the quiet architect of each raindrop's shape. Gravity is the storyteller who guides it home. And when a rainburst begins, it is simply many droplets reaching their moment together, each one rounded, cohesive, ready. Water resists falling until it can't, and when it lets go, it does so beautifully. Not all rain is the same. Some rain arrives like a whisper, so light it barely disturbs the air. Some rain arrives in a concentrated cascade, darkening the world in moments. Both are part of the same water cycle. Both begin in clouds, and yet their rhythms feel entirely different. Tonight, we drift between the soft mist of drizzle and the sudden cinematic burst of a cloudburst. Drizzle forms in low, layered clouds called stratus clouds. These clouds stretch wide across the sky like a soft grey blanket. They do not rise high into freezing air. They do not build towering shapes. Instead, they hover low and steady, filled with tiny droplets suspended close to the earth. In drizzle, the droplets remain small, often less than 0.5 millimeter across. They form through the gentle collision of similar-sized droplets within the cloud. There are no strong updrafts or dramatic vertical motions. The cloud simply gathers moisture slowly, evenly. When drizzle falls, it feels almost weightless. You may not even hear it at first. It settles onto surfaces quietly, creating a fine mist that clings to hair and fabric. The horizon softens. Streetlights glow with halos. The world feels wrapped in gauze. Drizzle has a steady pulse, unhurried, consistent, calming. A cloudburst, by contrast, forms within taller clouds, often cumulonimbus, where vertical motion is stronger. Updrafts lift moisture high into cooler layers. Droplets grow larger through collision and, sometimes, through ice processes aloft. When the cloud reaches its release point, rainfall can intensify quickly. A cloudburst is localized and brief, but concentrated. Larger droplets fall together, and the rainfall rate can be high for a short time. The sound is fuller, a rushing rhythm on rooftops, a quick darkening of pavement. Yet even this is not harsh, it is simply focused. Drizzle and cloudburst differ not in purpose, but in process. Drizzle is born of gentle accumulation in shallow clouds. Cloudburst is born of vertical growth and concentrated release. In drizzle, droplets remain small because there is limited vertical motion to encourage rapid growth. In a cloudburst, strong internal currents allow droplets to grow larger before falling. One feels like a soft breath, the other feels like a held breath released. But both are expressions of balance restored. Meteorologists measure rainfall intensity in millimeters per hour. Drizzle might produce less than half a millimeter in that time. A cloudburst may deliver many times more in just minutes. And yet, in the grand scale of the atmosphere, both are fleeting. Tonight, as you imagine rain, you might picture the contrast. The misty hush of drizzle, barely visible threads drifting downward. The silver curtain of a cloudburst, brief, concentrated, luminous. Each has its own sleepy rhythm. Each shapes the world differently. Drizzle softens edges. Cloudburst deepens colors. But neither lasts forever. Clouds drift. Moisture cycles. The sky resets. Not all rain is the same, and that is part of its beauty. Sometimes it arrives as a murmur, sometimes as a momentary crescendo, but always it is water returning home, in whatever rhythm the atmosphere has composed for that day. And as you rest tonight, perhaps you can feel both patterns, the mist and the cascade, blending into one continuous, calming story of sky and earth. Some sudden rains come from compact storm cells, self-contained weather systems. They are like little islands in the sky, drifting across the atmosphere with their own internal weather. From a distance, they may look like a single cloud swelling upward, bright at the top and darker underneath. But within that compact shape is a complete system, rising air, falling rain, circulating winds, and moisture moving through invisible pathways. Tonight, we float gently around these sky islands. A storm cell is often born when warm air near the surface begins to rise. Perhaps sunlight has heated the ground through the afternoon, warming the air above it. Or perhaps a subtle boundary between air masses has formed, where warm, humid air meets slightly cooler air. Along this boundary, air is nudged upward. Once the lift begins, convection takes over. Warm air rises, cooling as it ascends. Water vapor condenses into droplets. A cumulus cloud forms. And if the atmosphere is unstable enough, meaning the air above is much cooler than the air below, the rising continues. The cloud grows taller, becoming a towering cumulus, and then a cumulonimbus. Inside the storm cell, an updraft forms its heart. It is the engine that carries moisture upward. The updraft can be gentle or strong, depending on how much energy is available. But even in a small storm cell, the upward motion can be enough to build a cloud that produces sudden rain. As droplets collide and grow, precipitation begins to form. Some droplets freeze into ice crystals higher up, then melt as they fall. Others grow through warm rain processes. Either way, the storm cell begins to carry weight. Eventually, rain falls, and as rain falls, it changes the air around it. Evaporation cools the surrounding atmosphere. Cooling creates denser air. Dense air sinks. This forms a downdraft, a descending current that can strengthen quickly beneath the storm. Now, the storm cell has two main flows: air rising through the center, air sinking through the rain shaft. These flows create a cycle. The updraft continues feeding the cloud, while the downdraft releases rain and spreads outward near the ground. When the downdraft spreads, it can create a gust front, a gentle push of cooler air that moves outward like a slow wave. Sometimes, this spreading air can lift nearby warm air and trigger new storm cells. In this way, storm cells can reproduce like drifting seeds. But many storm cells remain solitary. They live brief, complete lives. Meteorologists describe a storm cell's life cycle in stages. First, the cumulus stage, when the updraft dominates and the cloud grows. Then, the mature stage, when rain begins and both updrafts and downdrafts exist together. Finally, the dissipating stage, when downdrafts weaken the updraft, cutting off the storm's supply of warm, rising air. This entire cycle may last less than an hour, short-lived but beautifully complete. We float gently around these storm cells and watch them form, mature, and fade. They are not vast systems like hurricanes or long frontal storms. They are compact and personal, localized pockets of sky energy, blooming and releasing in one area, while the rest of the horizon remains calm. This is why sudden rain can feel so strange. One neighborhood may be drenched, while another a mile away stays dry. One street glistens with puddles, while another remains sunlit. The storm cell is like a passing visitor, a brief curtain of rain, a cool breath of air, a darkening cloud shadow. Then it moves on, or it dissolves entirely, leaving only wisps behind. Tonight, as you rest, imagine these miniature storm systems floating above you, self-contained weather worlds, drifting quietly, living out their gentle cycle, born from warmth, lifted by convection, released by gravity, and then, as all things in the atmosphere eventually do, they fade, leaving behind softened air, damp earth, and the calm hush that follows. Rain. In warm months, heat builds quickly and fuels sudden bursts. Summer has a particular way of warming the world. The sun rises early, climbs high, and lingers long. The ground absorbs heat steadily through the day, storing warmth in soil, pavement, rooftops, and trees. Even the air itself begins to feel thicker, fuller, as humidity gathers. In this season, the atmosphere is often already close to its tipping point. Warm air near the surface becomes buoyant, eager to rise. Moisture evaporates easily from lakes, rivers, gardens, and oceans. Plants release water vapor through their leaves, adding invisible humidity to the lower atmosphere. Everything feels alive with warmth, and all of this creates energy. Meteorologists call this energy convective available potential energy, or CAPE. It is a measure of how much buoyant lift the atmosphere can provide. But tonight, we can think of it more softly. It is the stored warmth of summer, waiting quietly to rise. When the right trigger arrives, perhaps a subtle shift in wind, a sea breeze pushing inland, or air forced upward by a hill, the warm air begins to lift. And once it lifts, it accelerates quickly, because the air above is often cooler. This is why summer storms can build so fast. A cloud that was small and innocent at noon can become a towering storm by late afternoon. The vertical growth is rapid. The cloud rises high, gathering moisture, expanding into layers of bright white and shadowed grey. Within these tall summer clouds, droplets collide and grow quickly. Warm air feeds the updraft. Moisture condenses readily in humid conditions. The cloud becomes efficient at producing precipitation. And so, rain arrives suddenly. We'll explore the cozy chaos of summertime skies, thunder, sunlight, and brief, refreshing rain. Summer storms often feel intense because they are concentrated. The storm cell may be small, but the rainfall rate can be high. The drops can be large, heavy, warm at first, then cool as the downdraft strengthens. And yet, the storm rarely lasts long. Why? Because the same rain that falls also weakens the storm. As rain pours downward, it drags air with it. Evaporation cools the air beneath the storm. Cooler air sinks, spreading outward along the ground. This cuts off the storm's supply of warm rising air. Without that warm updraft, the storm begins to fade. The cloud loses its vertical strength. The rain lightens, the sky brightens. Sunlight returns, sometimes even before the pavement has dried. This quick cycle is a signature of summertime convection. It is why you can watch a storm bloom pour and vanish within the span of an hour. It is why the air afterward feels fresher, cooler, washed clean. Sometimes, sunlight breaks through while rain is still falling, creating bright contrasts, glowing raindrops, shimmering puddles, and occasionally the soft arc of a rainbow. Summer storms can contain thunder, but tonight we do not focus on it as something frightening. Thunder is simply sound. The atmosphere's way of adjusting to sudden heat changes around lightning channels. It is part of the summer storm's energy release, a reminder that warmth and electricity can gather together in tall clouds. But even with thunder, summer storms often feel playful rather than threatening. They are brief bursts of atmosphere releasing stored heat, like the sky stretching after a long, warm day. As you rest tonight, imagine a summer afternoon turning gently into evening. The air is warm, the clouds rise quietly in the distance. The storm builds like a slow breath, then releases its rain in a short, refreshing cascade. And afterward, calm returns. The world smells cleaner. The trees drip softly. The air feels lighter. Summer storms are quick and intense because summer is generous with heat. And when the sky has gathered enough of that warmth, it releases it gently in a brief cinematic shower that cools the earth and restores balance. Then the clouds drift away, leaving only the soft memory of rain. Yes, it happens. Sometimes you step outside and the world looks bright and clear. The sky is blue, open, almost innocent. Sunlight stretches across rooftops and sidewalks, and shadows lie calmly on the ground. Everything seems dry, peaceful, untouched by weather. And then you feel it. A drop of water on your arm, a cool bead on your forehead, a sudden soft tapping on the pavement. Rainfall from a blue sky can feel like a small mystery, as if the atmosphere is playing a gentle trick. But it is real, and it has a name that feels just as dreamy as the experience itself. Sun showers. A sun shower is rain that falls while the sun is still shining. It may happen when only a small cloud drifts overhead, too thin or too isolated to cover the whole sky. Or it may happen when rain falls from a cloud that is far away, carried sideways by wind into an area of clear sky. Because rain does not always fall straight down, raindrops can drift. As they descend, wind pushes them along, guiding them gently across the landscape. A cloud might be raining in the distance, but the drops travel outward, carried like tiny wandering travelers. When they reach you, the sky above might still appear clear, especially if the cloud is behind you or hidden by perspective. Sometimes, the cloud producing the rain is so small you barely notice it. A single compact shower cloud may be floating overhead, releasing a brief sprinkle. Its edges may be bright and sunlit, blending softly into the blue. The rain falls from its underside, while sunlight continues to shine around it. This is one of the quiet miracles of the atmosphere. We wander gently through the science of how rain sometimes falls from a sky that still seems clear. Often, sun showers occur when the atmosphere is unstable, when warm air rises and small convective clouds form quickly. These clouds may not grow into full storms. They may simply reach a point where droplets become heavy enough to fall. The rain begins, brief and delicate, and then the cloud dissolves again. Sometimes sun showers happen near the edges of larger storms. The main storm may be far away, its dark cloud base visible on the horizon. But the outer rain shafts stretch outward, thin and scattered. Under the right wind conditions, these scattered drops drift into sunlit regions, creating rain that seems to come from nowhere. This is why sun showers can feel magical. The world is lit in gold, and yet rain falls like silver threads. The drops sparkle as they pass through sunlight. The air smells fresh, and the ground darkens in soft patterns. It is one of the most cinematic forms of rain, and because the sun remains visible, the light remains strong enough to create a rainbow. Sun showers are often the perfect setting for those gentle arcs of colour, appearing briefly like a whisper in the sky. But even without a rainbow, the experience has a softness that feels almost unreal. Meteorologically, there is no contradiction here. Rain does not require darkness. It requires only a cloud that has gathered droplets heavy enough to fall. The cloud may be small, it may be far away, but the physics remains the same. Condensation, coalescence, gravity. The blue sky is simply a matter of viewpoint. You are seeing the clear portion of the atmosphere above you, while the rain is arriving from elsewhere. The sky is not lying, it is simply layered. Sun showers remind us that weather is not a single curtain pulled across the world. It is a patchwork, a mosaic of clouds and sunlight and moisture, drifting in quiet pieces. Tonight, as you rest, imagine standing beneath a sun shower, warm light on your face, cool drops on your hands, the world glowing as if washed in gold, rain without darkness, water without warning, a gentle surprise. Yes, it happens, and perhaps that is what makes it so soothing, a reminder that the sky is full of quiet wonders, even when it seems perfectly clear. Rain doesn't always fall evenly. Sometimes you look out the window and see a street glistening with water, but only a few blocks away, everything is dry. Or you drive through a sudden downpour, only to emerge into sunlight moments later. The change can feel abrupt, like stepping between two different worlds. But the atmosphere often works this way, not as a single blanket of rain covering everything, but as a patchwork of narrow columns, drifting cells and localized showers. The sky is wide, and rainfall is often selective. Some clouds drop their contents in narrow columns. This is especially common in convective rain, rain produced by rising air and compact clouds. In these situations, a cloud may be actively raining only in one small portion of its structure. The rest of the cloud may still be forming droplets, still holding moisture, still waiting. The rain falls beneath the heaviest region, where droplets have grown large enough to descend. This creates a rain shaft, a visible curtain of rain. sometimes appearing like a soft grey column hanging from the cloud base. From a distance, it looks like the cloud is reaching down to touch the earth. And sometimes it is only touching one small area. We explore how hyperlocal rain creates patchwork wetness across neighborhoods. Localized rain happens because clouds are not uniform. Even within a single storm cell, some parts have stronger updrafts, more moisture, or heavier precipitation. These concentrated areas release rain, while nearby areas remain dry. Wind can also shape rainfall distribution. As drops fall, they may be pushed sideways, spreading the rain outward or narrowing it depending on the wind's direction and speed. A shifting breeze can move the rain shaft slightly, like a spotlight drifting across the landscape. This is why one side of a street might be wet while the other remains dry. In summertime, localized rain is especially common. Small storm cells form quickly and release rain in concentrated bursts. These cells may only be a mile or two wide. They drift slowly, raining heavily in one area and leaving another untouched. Meteorologists sometimes describe this as hit or miss precipitation. But tonight, we can think of it more gently. The atmosphere is choosing where to exhale. The patchwork effect is also influenced by cloud height. Rain falling from high clouds has more time to drift, spreading across a larger area. Rain falling from lower clouds may remain more concentrated, falling straight down in narrow columns. In some cases, rain can even evaporate before reaching the ground. This is called virga, precipitation that falls from a cloud but disappears into dry air below. From a distance, you can see streaks beneath a cloud, but the ground remains dry. This too creates patchwork wetness. One neighborhood may feel the rain, another may only see it hanging in the air. Localized bursts are also shaped by boundaries in the atmosphere, subtle lines where air masses meet. A sea breeze boundary, for example, can trigger storms along one narrow corridor, leaving surrounding areas dry. The same happens along outflow boundaries from previous storms, where cooler air spreads and lifts warmer air ahead of it. These invisible lines can organize rain into narrow bands, and so the world becomes a quilt of weather. Wet streets, dry sidewalks, puddles in one yard, dust in another. Rain doesn't always fall evenly because the atmosphere is not evenly balanced. It is constantly adjusting, constantly redistributing heat and moisture. Hyperlocal rain reminds us that weather is intimate. It is not always a grand event seen by everyone. Sometimes it is a small shower meant only for one neighborhood, one park, one stretch of road. Tonight, as you rest, imagine looking down from above, clouds drifting like islands, rain falling in thin columns like soft threads, the earth below catching water in scattered patches. Some places darken, some stay bright, and in time, the clouds move on, leaving behind a landscape that tells a quiet story of where the sky chose to release its rain, and where it chose, for now, to simply drift. Gravity pulls at droplets from the moment they form. Even inside the quiet cradle of a cloud, where droplets seem suspended in stillness, gravity is present. It does not wait until rain begins. It does not suddenly switch on. It has been there all along, a constant, patient force, drawing everything gently toward the earth. And yet, droplets do not fall immediately. When a droplet first forms from condensing vapor, it is incredibly small, so light that tiny upward motions in the air can keep it afloat. Within a cloud, countless microscopic currents move softly in every direction. These subtle lifts are enough to balance gravity's pull, holding droplets in a delicate suspension. This balance can last for a surprisingly long time. Clouds, after all, are made of water, and yet they float. The secret lies in size. Gravity pulls at droplets from the moment they form, but its influence depends on mass. A tiny droplet has very little weight. Air resistance, even in faint upward currents, can easily counteract gravity's steady tug. The droplet hovers, carried by invisible eddies, rising and sinking gently within the cloud. But droplets are rarely alone. They collide, they merge, they grow. As droplets combine through collision and coalescence, their mass increases. Each merger adds weight. Each increase in size strengthens gravity's influence. The droplet's descent becomes more likely, but still, it may remain suspended if the updraft is strong enough. So what makes them let go all at once? The answer lies in thresholds. Inside a growing cloud, conditions can change gradually. Updrafts may weaken slightly. Cooling may reduce the buoyancy of rising air. Droplets may reach a size where the balance tips, where gravity's pull finally exceeds the upward push of air currents. When many droplets reach that tipping point, together, rain can begin suddenly. It is not that gravity becomes stronger. It is that the support holding the droplets aloft becomes just slightly weaker. Imagine a balance scale held perfectly even. On one side sits gravity, on the other, upward air motion. As droplets grow, the scale tilts ever so slightly toward descent. When enough droplets reach sufficient mass at the same time, the shift feels sudden from below. A rainburst is often the result of this collective tipping. The cloud has been carrying moisture quietly. Gravity has been tugging steadily. Updrafts have been sustaining suspension. But once the internal structure shifts, once cooling air increases downdrafts, or updrafts weaken, gravity completes its work, and the droplets fall. Gravity's strength is constant. It does not rush. It does not intensify in moments of rainfall. It is steady, unwavering, ever present. What changes is the cloud's ability to resist it. Sometimes that resistance fades gradually, leading to light drizzle. Other times, it fades more quickly, leading to a sudden release. Tonight, we explore the quiet strength of gravity and why it sometimes acts suddenly. But sudden is a matter of perspective. From the sky's point of view, the preparation was slow. Droplets formed, merged, and grew. Air currents shifted gently. Temperatures changed by small degrees. The tipping point was simply the final stage of a long process. Gravity did not surprise the cloud. It waited, and when the balance tipped, gravity guided the droplets home. As you rest tonight, imagine gravity not as something heavy or forceful, but as something tender, a soft, constant invitation, a reminder that everything formed in the sky eventually returns to Earth. Droplets gather, they grow, they hover for a time, and then, when the balance shifts, they fall, not abruptly, not violently, simply because gravity has been there all along, quietly calling them home. Have you noticed the hush before a rainburst? There is often a pause in the world, a subtle quieting. The wind may soften, birds may grow still. The air feels heavier somehow, as though the sky is holding its breath. This hush is not imagined. Before rain begins, atmospheric pressure and wind patterns often shift gently. Rising air within clouds can reduce surface winds temporarily. The world seems to settle, as if waiting. Then comes the first sound. A single drop lands, perhaps on a leaf, perhaps on pavement, perhaps on a rooftop. The sound is distinct, isolated, a small tap in a field of quiet. Another follows. Scattered tapping begins, uneven, irregular. Each drop large enough to be heard separately. The ground is still dry, so the impact produces a crisp, defined tone. On metal surfaces, the sound rings lightly. On soil, it thuds softly. On leaves, it flickers like fingertips brushing fabric. Why does rain sound different when it begins? In the early moments of rainfall, droplets are often larger and more widely spaced. As we explored earlier, the first drops tend to be heavier. Larger drops strike surfaces with more force, creating sharper sounds. And because they fall alone or in small numbers, the ear can distinguish each impact. The soundscape is sparse. But as rainfall intensifies, the pattern changes. More droplets fall, smaller droplets join larger ones. Impacts overlap. The ground begins to wet. Wet surfaces absorb sound differently than dry ones. Instead of crisp taps, the sound becomes softer, blended, more continuous. The scattered tapping becomes a gentle roar. Not a harsh roar, but a full one, like white noise, like a steady hush filling the air. The sound of rain is shaped by many factors: droplet size, rainfall rate, surface type, wind speed. A rainburst, with its larger drops and sudden onset, often begins with louder impacts before settling into a steady rhythm. There is also the sound of rain moving through trees, a layered whisper. Leaves catch droplets, holding them briefly before releasing them in delayed drips. The canopy creates a soft percussion above the ground, adding texture to the rainfall's voice. And beneath it all is the subtle sound of air shifting. As rain falls, downdrafts may bring cooler air to the surface. Wind may rise gently. This adds a faint rustle, blending with the tapping and hissing of water. We drift into sound, the soft build-up, the scattered tapping, and then the sudden gentle roar. There is something deeply soothing about this progression. The first drops announce change. The steady rain sustains it, and eventually the sound softens again as the rain lightens. Many people find the sound of rainfall calming because it is consistent yet organic. It has no sharp edges once it settles. It masks other noises. It fills silence without demanding attention. The hush before a rainburst heightens this contrast. Silence. Tap. Tap. Then a widening curtain of sound. As you rest tonight, imagine lying beneath a roof while rain begins above you. The first drops spaced like distant footsteps. Then the pattern thickening, becoming a soft, enveloping hum. The world outside fades slightly. The rhythm of rain takes over. Not urgent, not overwhelming. Just the sky speaking in water. And as the rain continues, the sound becomes steady and familiar. A gentle reminder that above you, droplets are completing their long journey from cloud to earth, one soft note at a time. Sometimes rain forms, then disappears mid-fall. From the ground, you might look up and see streaks beneath a cloud. Thin, pale curtains trailing downward like soft threads. They look like rain. They move like rain. They are rain. And yet, the earth below remains dry. This peaceful phenomenon is called virga. Virga is precipitation that falls from a cloud but evaporates before reaching the ground. It is one of the most delicate sights in meteorology, a reminder that the atmosphere is layered and that what happens above us does not always arrive below. Tonight, we uncover the quiet beauty of this invisible rain. Rain begins its life in a cloud, just like any other. Droplets grow through collision and coalescence, or ice crystals form high above and melt into liquid as they descend. Gravity pulls the droplets downward, and the cloud begins to release its moisture. But beneath the cloud, the air may be dry. Dry air has a gentle hunger for water vapor. When raindrops fall into it, they begin to evaporate. Evaporation is the process of liquid water turning back into vapor. It requires energy, and it draws that energy from the surrounding air. This is why evaporation cools the air. As rain evaporates mid-fall, it cools the air around it, making that air denser. Denser air sinks, and this sinking motion can create downdrafts. So virga is not just a visual phenomenon, it also shapes the movement of air. Even invisible rain can influence the atmosphere. Sometimes virga happens because the cloud base is high and the air below is warm and dry. The raindrops have a long distance to travel. Along the way, they evaporate fully, vanishing before they ever touch the ground. Other times, virga happens because the precipitation is light, tiny droplets or small ice particles that evaporate easily. From below, it can look like the cloud is trailing wisps of grey silk. In sunset light, virga can glow softly, tinted pink and gold. It can appear almost like a waterfall made of air. And sometimes it is a gentle sign that rain may soon arrive. Because as precipitation evaporates, it adds moisture to the lower atmosphere. Slowly, drop by drop, the dry air becomes less dry. Eventually, if enough moisture accumulates, rain may begin reaching the ground. This is one way sudden rainfall can occur. At first, rain falls invisibly, evaporating in silence. The sky seems to be raining without result. But as the air moistens, evaporation slows. Drops survive longer. And then, suddenly, the rain reaches you. A rainburst can feel like it. Appears from nowhere. But often, the atmosphere has been preparing quietly through virga. We'll uncover this phenomenon and the role it plays in sudden rainfall. Virga also contributes to cooling beneath clouds. As evaporating rain chills the air, that cooler air may sink rapidly, strengthening downdrafts. When a downdraft reaches the ground, it can spread outward and intensify rainfall patterns nearby. In this way, virga is both gentle and powerful, not in a dramatic sense, but in a subtle atmospheric sense. It is rain that reshapes the air without ever touching the earth. Tonight, as you rest, imagine looking up at a high cloud and seeing faint streaks beneath it. Rain falling through dry air, dissolving into invisibility. Water returning to vapor before it completes its descent. It is like a half-told story. A drop begins its journey. It falls. It fades. And yet, even as it disappears, it cools the air, moistens the layers, and changes the sky's balance. Invisible rain that never reaches us still matters. It is part of the atmosphere's quiet conversation. And perhaps that is the comfort of virga, the reminder that not everything in nature needs to arrive to have an effect. Sometimes, the most important processes happen gently, unseen. Rain that never reaches the ground is still rain. It is simply rain that chooses to become air again. Layers of warm and cool air affect how rain behaves. The atmosphere is not a single uniform space. It is a layered world, like a calm ocean of air, with different temperatures and densities stacked gently above one another. Sometimes these layers blend smoothly. Other times they remain distinct, creating boundaries that shape clouds, winds, and rainfall. Tonight, we explore atmospheric layering. Most of the time, temperature decreases as you go higher. The ground warms the air near it, and higher altitudes remain cooler. This normal pattern allows warm air to rise, fueling clouds and precipitation. But sometimes, the atmosphere reverses its usual arrangement. A temperature inversion occurs when a layer of warm air sits above cooler air near the surface. Instead of cooling with height, the temperature increases for a time. The warm layer acts like a lid, trapping the cooler air beneath it. This creates stability. Cool air below cannot rise easily because it is already denser and colder. The warm air above prevents mixing, keeping the atmosphere layered and calm. Inversions are often associated with foggy mornings, hazy skies, and still air, but they also influence rainfall in quiet and interesting ways, because rain must pass through these layers. If a cloud forms above an inversion, precipitation falling from it may enter a warmer layer, then a cooler layer, then perhaps warmer again. Each layer affects the droplets differently. Temperature changes can alter evaporation rates, droplet size, and even the form of precipitation. We explore how sudden cooling unlocks sudden rain. Sometimes, an inversion prevents clouds from developing vertically. Instead of towering storm clouds, you may see flat, layered clouds spread across the sky. Rain in these situations is often light or patchy because the atmosphere is stable and vertical motion is limited. But inversions do not always last. When the sun rises and warms the ground, the cooler surface air begins to heat. The inversion weakens. The trapped air becomes more buoyant. Suddenly, vertical motion becomes possible again. When the lid lifts, convection can begin quickly. This can lead to sudden cloud growth and sudden rain, especially if moisture has been accumulating beneath the inversion. The atmosphere has been holding its ingredients quietly: warmth, humidity, potential energy. Once the inversion breaks, the stored energy can rise. This is one reason rainfall can feel abrupt. The sky may seem calm for hours, held in layered stillness. Then, when mixing begins, clouds build rapidly and rain arrives as if released. Inversions can also influence virga and evaporation. A warm layer can dry falling rain quickly, while a cooler layer below may slow evaporation. The result can be patchy rainfall, rain reaching the ground in some areas but disappearing in others. These layered effects create complex rain patterns, but the mood of the atmosphere remains gentle. It is simply the sky arranging itself. Temperature inversions remind us that the air above us is structured, even when it feels invisible. The sky is made of layers, each one with its own temperature, moisture, and movement. Tonight, imagine these layers like soft blankets stacked above the earth. Cool air resting near the ground, warm air floating above it, clouds drifting higher still, rain falling through them like a traveler passing through different rooms. Some layers warm it, some cool it, some allow it to survive, and some dissolve it into vapor. And when the layers shift, when cooling unlocks motion, when warmth rises and the inversion breaks, rain can begin suddenly, not as a surprise, but as a release of stored balance. The atmosphere is always arranging itself into harmony. Sometimes that harmony is quiet stillness, sometimes it is rainfall, and both are part of the same calm, layered sky. When air masses meet, rain often follows. The atmosphere is always moving, even when it feels still. Vast regions of air drift across continents and oceans, carrying their own temperatures, moisture levels, and personalities. Some air masses are warm and humid, rising gently like breath. Others are cool and dry, steady and dense. And sometimes these different bodies of air meet. When they do, they create a boundary, a line in the sky that is not visible but deeply influential. Meteorologists call it a front. Tonight, we wander along a sleepy front line. A frontal boundary is not a wall. It is more like a slow blending zone, where one air mass gradually gives way to another. But even in this gradual transition, the contrast matters. Warm air and cool air behave differently. Warm air is lighter, so it prefers to rise. Cool air is heavier, so it tends to settle low. When a cool air mass advances into warm air, it wedges underneath it, gently lifting the warm air upward. This lifting is not sudden or violent. It is simply buoyancy and density doing what they naturally do. And as warm air rises, it cools. Cooling causes water vapor to condense into droplets, forming clouds. With enough lift and enough moisture, those clouds begin to release rain. This is one of the most common ways rainfall forms. Sky begins to cry, not out of sadness, but out of physics. There are different types of fronts, each with its own mood. A warm front occurs when warm air slowly glides up and over cooler air. This creates gentle, layered clouds that often spread across wide regions. Rain from warm fronts tends to be steady and soft, a slow soaking rather than a sudden burst. A cold front occurs when cooler air pushes underneath warmer air more forcefully. The warm air is lifted more quickly, often producing taller clouds and more concentrated rain. Cold fronts can create showers that feel more sudden, brief, heavier bursts followed by clearing skies. But even here, the atmosphere is not aggressive. It is simply shifting. In both cases, the key is lift. Frontal boundaries provide a natural ramp for air to rise. They create organized upward motion over large distances. The result can be rain that arrives not from a single small storm cell, but from an entire moving line of clouds. We wander along this front line, imagining it stretching for hundreds of miles, a quiet seam stitched across the sky. On one side, warmer air rests. On the other, cooler air settles. Between them, clouds form like a soft meeting place. Sometimes, the clouds are thick and layered, spreading like sheets of grey. Sometimes, they are towering, forming bands of showers. Often, they create rain that feels inevitable. Rain that arrives steadily as the front approaches, then fades as it passes. Frontal rain can last longer than convective rainbursts because the lifting mechanism is sustained. The boundary continues moving, continuing to lift warm air, continuing to generate clouds and precipitation. Yet even this long-lasting rain can feel gentle. It is a slow procession of weather, a drifting curtain of clouds, a softening of light, a steady rhythm on rooftops. Tonight, as you rest, imagine a front approaching your region, not as a harsh collision, but as two air masses greeting each other. Warm air rising politely, cool air sliding in quietly. A calm exchange. The sky's temperature layers rearrange themselves. Moisture condenses. Droplets gather, and rain begins. When air masses meet, rain often follows. It is the atmosphere's way of smoothing out contrasts, of blending differences into balance. And when the front moves on, it leaves behind a changed air, perhaps cooler, perhaps drier, perhaps clearer, but always calmer, because the atmosphere has done what it always does, adjusted gently and let the excess moisture fall as rain. Storms leave behind trails of cooler air. After a rainburst passes, you may notice the air feels different, cooler, fresher. Sometimes the wind shifts. Sometimes the scent of wet earth rises and lingers. Even if the storm has moved far away, its presence remains in the atmosphere like a soft footprint. Meteorologists call this footprint an outflow boundary. An outflow boundary forms when rain-cooled air spreads outward from beneath a storm. Inside a storm cloud, rain falls through air that may be dry or partially dry. As some of that rain evaporates, it cools the surrounding air. Cooler air becomes denser. Dense air sinks. This sinking creates a downdraft. When the downdraft reaches the ground, it cannot continue downward. Instead, it spreads outward in all directions, like a gentle wave. This spreading pool of cool air is the storm's outflow. At its leading edge, where it meets warmer air outside the storm, a boundary forms. This boundary is often invisible, but its effects can be felt. A sudden cool breeze, a subtle shift in wind direction, a faint line of dust or leaves moving along the ground. Sometimes, the outflow boundary looks like a thin arc of clouds forming along its edge. As the cool air pushes outward, it lifts the warm air ahead of it slightly upward. That lifting can cause condensation, creating a low, rolling shelf of cloud. Not dramatic, just atmospheric motion made visible. Outflow boundaries are fascinating because they can trigger new rainbursts. When warm air is lifted along the boundary, it may begin rising enough to form new convective clouds. If the atmosphere is unstable, those clouds can grow quickly into new storm cells. In this way, a storm can plant the seeds of its own successor. A storm leaves behind cool air, and that cool air can create new lift. Sometimes, this leads to clusters of storms forming in a line, one after another, like quiet dominoes across the landscape. We drift through these sky footprints, the quiet aftermath of a storm. Outflow boundaries can travel many miles away from the original storm. You might feel a sudden cool gust even if the rain is far off on the horizon. The boundary arrives first, like a messenger, and then, perhaps later, a new cloud forms above it. This is why sudden rain can sometimes arrive after a storm has already passed elsewhere. The atmosphere remains active, reorganizing itself. The cool outflow spreads, lifts warm air, and creates new pockets of cloud growth. Outflow boundaries also contribute to the patchwork nature of rainfall. They can create narrow corridors where storms form, leaving nearby regions untouched. They can cause rainbursts to appear unexpectedly, triggered not by the sun alone, but by the lingering influence of a previous storm. The atmosphere remembers. Even after rain stops, the air carries the storm's signature. Cooler temperatures, moisture redistributed, wind patterns reshaped. Tonight, imagine a storm fading into the distance. The cloud dissolves. The rain ends, but beneath it, a pool of cool air spreads outward like a slow tide. It moves quietly across fields and streets, hugging the ground. It lifts warmer air at its edge, encouraging new clouds to bloom. A storm's gentle footprint, not a scar, not a disruption, just a soft after-effect, the atmosphere continuing its slow work. Outflow boundaries remind us that weather is connected. One rainburst can influence the next. One storm can shape the air for hours afterward. And in this way, the sky feels like a living story, each chapter leaving behind a trace that quietly guides the next. As you rest tonight, let that thought settle in. Even after rain passes, the atmosphere continues to breathe, and sometimes, in the calm aftermath, it prepares for another gentle release. We travel skyward into the towering thunderheads that release downpours in sudden surrender. Cumulonimbus clouds are some of the most dramatic shapes the atmosphere can create, yet even they are formed through gentle processes. They begin, as so many clouds do, with warmth near the surface. Sunlight heats the ground warms the air rises. At first, the cloud is only a small cumulus, bright, soft-edged, almost playful. But when the atmosphere is unstable, that rising air continues upward without much resistance. It climbs like a steady elevator, carrying moisture higher and higher, and the cloud grows. Cumulonimbus clouds are vertical giants. They stretch upward for miles, building towering columns that can reach the upper troposphere. Their tops often flatten into an anvil shape, spreading wide where the rising air meets a stable layer above. From the ground, they look like mountains made of vapor. Their story is one of height, heat, and heavy hearts. Inside a cumulonimbus cloud, there is constant motion. Warm updrafts surge upward through the center, delivering moisture into colder regions. Droplets collide, merge, freeze, melt, and collide again. Ice crystals form high above. Supercooled water droplets cling to them. Pellets of graupel and tiny hailstones can develop as they are carried up and down by the cloud's internal currents. Yet despite the complexity, the overall rhythm remains simple. Warm air rises, water condenses, gravity pulls downward. The height of a cumulonimbus cloud matters because it creates layers of temperature. The lower portion may be warm enough for liquid droplets. Higher up, the cloud enters freezing air. Here, ice processes dominate. The presence of both liquid and ice allows precipitation to grow efficiently. This is why cumulonimbus clouds can produce heavy rain. They are not only tall, but productive. Their internal updrafts gather moisture quickly. Their colder upper layers encourage ice growth. And when that ice melts on the way down, it becomes rain, often large, heavy drops. At a certain point, the cloud can no longer hold everything aloft. The internal updrafts may weaken as cooler downdrafts develop. Evaporation of falling rain chills the air, strengthening descending currents. These downdrafts push downward, bringing precipitation with them. This is the moment of release. A downpour begins, sometimes suddenly, as if the cloud has reached its limit and is letting go all at once. And yet, it is not a collapse. It is a transition. The cumulonimbus cloud has reached maturity. It has gathered moisture and energy. It has built its towering shape through hours of rising air. Now, it is simply returning what it has collected. In meteorology, this is the mature stage of a thunderstorm cell, when updrafts and downdrafts exist together. Rain falls heavily. The cloud's base darkens. The atmosphere beneath becomes cooler. The storm's footprint spreads outward along the ground. But even in this stage, the cloud remains part of a larger cycle. It is a giant exhale of the atmosphere. As the downdraft spreads, it can cut off the warm inflow that fed the cloud. Without fresh rising air, the cumulonimbus begins to weaken. Its towering structure softens. The anvil top thins. The rain lightens. Eventually, the cloud dissolves, leaving behind only remnants, wisps and streaks, and fading shadows. The bursting giant is not permanent. It is a brief monument to heat and moisture meeting in the sky. Tonight, as you rest, imagine traveling upward into such a cloud, passing through layers of mist and droplets, feeling the coolness deepen as you rise, seeing ice crystals glitter faintly in filtered light. Then, slowly descending again, following the path of melting precipitation, ice becoming water, water becoming rain. Cumulonimbus clouds may appear powerful, but they are built from tiny droplets and gentle currents. Their story is one of height, heat, and heavy hearts, clouds carrying more than they can hold, until they surrender it back to the earth in a sudden downpour And afterward, the sky grows quiet again. The giant fades, the world below glistens, and the atmosphere breathes on. Inside a cloud, droplets dance and combine. Though clouds may appear like soft blankets from below, they are filled with motion, countless tiny droplets suspended in air, drifting gently within invisible currents. Each droplet begins as something almost unimaginably small, a bead of condensed vapor clinging to a microscopic particle. A cloud is made of these tiny beginnings, but rain requires growth. A droplet must become heavy enough to fall, heavy enough for gravity to overcome the cloud's upward air currents. And so, within the cloud, droplets begin to meet each other. They drift closer, they touch, they merge. This process is called collision and coalescence, but the names sound sharper than the reality. In truth, it is often a slow, tender choreography, droplets moving through the cloud like dancers in a dim ballroom, guided by gentle currents of air. Some droplets are slightly larger than others. That small difference matters. Larger droplets fall a little faster. As they descend through the cloud, they pass through smaller droplets, and collisions become more likely. Sometimes droplets bounce apart, but often surface tension holds them together, allowing them to fuse into one larger drop. We observe this gentle choreography, how individual drops become a collective whisper of rain. The cloud is full of quiet merging. One droplet becomes two, two become three, three become a drop large enough to begin falling. Each merger is a tiny event, almost too small to imagine. Yet billions of these events happen in a single cloud, every minute. Rain is not created by one dramatic moment, but by endless small unions. As droplets grow, their falling speed increases. This makes collisions happen more frequently, accelerating the process. It is like a snowball effect, but in liquid form. Growth becomes easier once it begins. In warm clouds, this is the primary pathway to rainfall. There is no need for freezing temperatures or ice crystals. The droplets simply merge until gravity calls them downward. In taller clouds, droplet mergers occur alongside ice processes. Ice crystals may form higher up, grow, and melt into droplets. Those melted drops then continue merging as they fall, becoming even larger. In both cases, the result is the same. A cloud gradually becomes ready to release rain. Sometimes, the release happens slowly, producing steady drizzle or light rain. Other times, it happens more suddenly, producing a rainburst. A sudden burst may occur when many droplets reach falling size at once, or when an updraft weakens, allowing larger drops to fall together. But no matter the pace, the process remains gentle. Inside the cloud, droplets are always moving, always interacting. They are carried by updrafts, stirred by turbulence, nudged into collisions by the subtle differences in their paths. The atmosphere is like a quiet mixing bowl, turning vapor into water, water into drops, drops into rain. If you could shrink yourself and float within a cloud, you might feel the cool dampness around you. You might see tiny beads glimmering in the dim light. You might watch them drift, merge, and grow. The cloud would feel alive, but not restless. It would feel patient. Raindrop mergers remind us that rain is collective. Each raindrop is the result of many smaller droplets joining together. It carries the history of countless encounters. And when the raindrop finally falls, it is not alone. Many others fall with it, each one shaped by the same quiet dance. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the cloud above you filled with drifting droplets. Picture them moving slowly, colliding softly, merging without effort. A gentle choreography, and then the moment of release. A whisper of rain begins, not from drama, not from force, but from countless small unions, becoming heavy enough to return home. Rain is the cloud's way of letting its droplets finish their dance. And when they reach the ground, they continue the rhythm, tapping softly, joining puddles, soaking soil, and completing the calm, endless cycle between sky and earth. The air holds more water than we imagine. Even on a day that feels dry, invisible water vapor drifts all around you. It rises from oceans and rivers, from damp soil and quiet lakes. It escapes gently from leaves through transpiration. It lifts from warm pavement after rain. The atmosphere is never truly empty of moisture. This hidden water is called humidity. Unlike clouds or raindrops, humidity cannot be seen. It exists as vapor, individual water molecules moving freely within the air. Warm air can hold more of this vapor than cool air, not because it creates space, but because warmer molecules move faster, making it easier for water vapor to remain suspended. There is always a limit. When air contains as much water vapor as it can comfortably hold at a given temperature, it is said to be saturated. Relative humidity reaches 100%. The air cannot hold additional vapor without something changing. And when it reaches its limit, it lets go. But letting go does not mean spilling, it means transforming. As air cools, its capacity to hold water vapor decreases. The molecules slow slightly, and vapor begins to gather onto microscopic particles, dust, salt, pollen. Condensation begins. Tiny droplets form. Clouds appear. Atmospheric saturation is a threshold, a quiet line between invisible vapor and visible water. The crossing of that line can feel sudden from below. A sky that seemed clear becomes softly clouded. A cloud that seemed harmless becomes ready to rain. We explore atmospheric saturation and the sigh that follows. Humidity plays a central role in sudden rainfall because high moisture content means droplets can grow quickly once lifting begins. If the air near the surface is already humid, rising air cools to its saturation point sooner. Clouds form more easily. Precipitation processes accelerate. It is like a glass already filled nearly to the brim. A small addition causes it to overflow. In the atmosphere, that addition is often lift, rising air triggered by heat, a front, or a boundary. Once the air cools to its dew point, condensation begins rapidly. The cloud thickens. Droplets gather. When saturation extends through a deep layer of the atmosphere, rainfall can become steady or even sudden. The sky has been holding water invisibly. Now it becomes visible. The sigh that follows saturation is rain. Humidity also explains the heavy feeling before a rainburst. Moist air is less dense than dry air at the same temperature, but it often accompanies warmth and low wind. The result can feel thick, almost suspended. The air seems to pause. This pause is not dramatic. It is simply the atmosphere nearing balance. As you rest tonight, imagine the air around you filled with unseen water molecules. They move softly, colliding gently, rising and drifting. You cannot see them, but they are there, a quiet reservoir in the sky. Picture the moment when cooling begins. Perhaps the sun dips lower. Perhaps rising air expands and cools. The invisible vapor begins to gather into droplets. A cloud forms, faint at first, then thicker, then ready. Humidity is hidden sky water. It waits patiently in vapor form until temperature and motion guide it into something tangible. And when that transition happens, it can feel like release, like the sky exhaling. The atmosphere does not cling to its moisture forever. It cycles it gently. Vapor becomes cloud. Cloud becomes rain. Rain returns to earth and begins again. When the air reaches its limit, it lets go. Not in frustration, not in force, but in a soft surrender to physics, a transformation from invisible to visible, from hidden to falling. And in that transformation, we are reminded that even the air around us carries quiet potential. All it needs is a little cooling, and then the sigh of rain begins. Sometimes the stillness before rain is as dreamy as the rain itself. There is a particular kind of quiet that settles over the world just before a sudden shower. It is not silence exactly, but a soft muting. The wind may ease, leaves stop fluttering, the air grows heavier, warmer, almost expectant. We linger in that quiet tension, the calm before the burst happens, because the atmosphere is reorganizing. Rising air within a cloud can temporarily reduce surface winds. Pressure patterns adjust subtly. The energy that will soon become rain is gathering above, but below, everything feels suspended. You might notice the light changing. Sunlight becomes filtered through thickening clouds. Shadows soften. The sky loses some of its brightness, shifting into a muted grey-blue. Colours deepen. Greens appear richer. The world looks almost cinematic, as though someone has lowered the volume of the day. Humidity often increases before rainfall. Moist air absorbs sound differently than dry air, contributing to the hush. The scent of earth may grow stronger, even before the first drop falls. Animals sense it too. Birds may quiet. Insects adjust their rhythm. There is a shared pause in the landscape. The hush before the heavens open is not an omen. It is preparation. Above, droplets are gathering. Updrafts are slowing. Gravity is becoming persuasive. Within the cloud, mergers are accelerating. Perhaps a downdraft is strengthening, cooling the air and shifting internal balance. But none of this is visible from the ground. From below, there is only stillness. This stillness can feel almost sacred, a small pocket of time suspended between dry and wet, between holding and release. Then the first drop falls. Sometimes it lands softly, almost unnoticed. Other times it strikes with a distinct tap, but it breaks the hush. It signals that the balance has shifted. More drops follow, spaced at first. The quiet tension dissolves into rhythm. The world begins to sound different. But for a brief moment, just before that first drop, there is a space where everything seems to wait. Meteorologically, the calm before a burst can be linked to the dominance of updrafts within a developing storm cell. As long as rising air is strong, surface winds may remain light. When downdrafts begin to form, they can arrive suddenly, bringing both wind and rain together. That transition from rising dominance to descending release can feel abrupt. Yet even abruptness has softness when you step back. The atmosphere has been building toward this moment for hours. Warmth gathered, moisture accumulated, clouds grew. The calm is simply the final inhalation. The burst is the exhalation. Tonight, as you rest, imagine yourself standing beneath a darkening sky. The air is warm against your skin. The world feels paused. A faint rumble in the distance perhaps, but mostly stillness. You take a breath. The sky takes one too. And then, the first drop. The calm before the burst is not emptiness. It is fullness, a sky heavy with moisture, a cloud nearly ready, a balance almost tipped. It is a reminder that release often comes after quiet, that rain does not always rush into the world. Sometimes it waits, gathering itself gently, letting the hush settle deeply before it begins. And in that hush, there is something profoundly soothing, because you know what comes next. The soft tapping, the steady rhythm, the cleansing fall. But for now, just linger in the stillness. The sky is holding its breath, and soon it will let go. Mountains lift air gently into the sky, where it cools and rains. There is something quietly powerful about a mountain range. It does not move. It does not chase storms. It simply stands, steady and silent. And yet, it shapes the sky around it. Air cannot pass through a mountain. It must go over. And when air is forced upward, rain often follows. Tonight, we trace this sleepy slope climb, and the bursts it creates. When wind carries moist air toward a mountain, the air meets the rising terrain like a slow wave meeting shore. The air has nowhere else to go, so it begins to lift. This lifting is called orographic uplift, a scientific phrase that simply means the land is pushing the air upward. As the air rises along the slope, it expands, and when air expands, it cools. Cooling allows water vapor to condense. Tiny droplets form, gathering into clouds that cling to the mountain's shoulders. Often, these clouds appear like scarves wrapped around peaks. The process can feel gentle and continuous. Moist air climbs, cools, condenses. The mountain acts like a quiet staircase for the atmosphere. But sometimes, the result is sudden. If the incoming air is warm and humid, it can carry a great deal of moisture. As it rises rapidly along steep terrain, condensation can happen quickly. Clouds can thicken fast, droplets can grow, and rain can begin in concentrated bursts, especially on the windward side, the side facing the incoming wind. Mountain rainbursts are common because the lifting mechanism is reliable. The mountain does not need heat from the sun or a front to create lift. It simply provides elevation. Even a stable atmosphere can produce clouds when air is pushed upward. And if the cloud becomes deep enough, rain can become heavy. Sometimes, localized storm cells form over mountains. Warm air rises from valleys during the day, meeting cooler air aloft. The mountain's shape focuses the rising motion, creating convection in small regions. A storm may form over one ridge, releasing a sudden downpour, while nearby valleys remain dry. This creates patchwork rain patterns that feel almost personal. A single slope drenched, a neighboring slope untouched, a forest steaming gently afterward. Mountains also influence rainfall by slowing storm movement. A storm that might drift steadily across flat land can become anchored against terrain, lingering longer in one area. When this happens, rain can accumulate quickly, and bursts can feel stronger and more sustained. Yet even then, the atmosphere is simply following its pathways. After air rises over a mountain, it often descends on the other side. Descending air warms as it compresses, becoming drier. This is why mountain ranges often create rain shadows, dry regions on the leeward side, sheltered from moisture. The windward side receives the rain. The leeward side receives the dryness. This contrast can be dramatic on a map, but tonight we hold it gently, as a natural balance. The mountain distributes moisture unevenly, creating lush slopes on one side and quieter, drier landscapes on the other. Mountain rain is often cool, even in summer. Rising air loses heat quickly. Clouds form close to the land. The rain feels fresh, clean, and close to the earth. Sometimes fog joins it, wrapping trees and rocks in a soft veil. And when a rainburst arrives on a mountainside, it can feel sudden, because the cloud base may be hidden. A hiker may be walking beneath blue sky, then turn a corner and step into a curtain of rain. The mountain creates its own weather rooms, one ridge sunny, the next drenched. Tonight, imagine the slow climb of moist air up a slope. It rises quietly, it cools, it gathers into cloud. Droplets form like tiny pearls. They merge, they grow heavy. Gravity begins its gentle pull. And then the rain begins, not as a storm's rage, but as a mountain's quiet offering. Mountains lift air gently into the sky, where it cools and rains. A sleepy slope climb, a soft release, a reminder that sometimes the land itself is the reason the sky decides to let go. We peek at how meteorologists see sudden rainfall. To most of us, rain is something we feel, on skin, on rooftops, on windows. We hear it before we fully see it. We smell it in the air. But for meteorologists, rain can also be seen from afar, even when it is still inside the cloud, still falling miles away. This quiet sight comes through weather radar. Radar is a tool that sends out pulses of energy, invisible waves that travel through the atmosphere. When these waves encounter raindrops, snowflakes, or hail, some of the energy bounces back toward the radar station. By measuring how much energy returns, meteorologists can estimate how much precipitation is present and where it is located. A dreamy map of droplets in motion. On radar screens, rainfall appears as shapes and colors. Blotches, bands, spirals, and soft gradients. Each color represents a different intensity of precipitation. Light rain might show as pale green or blue. Moderate rain might appear as yellow. Heavy rain often appears as orange or red. These colors are not meant to frighten. They are simply a language, a way of translating invisible water into visible patterns. Radar can show the structure of storm cells, revealing where rain is falling most intensely. A sudden rainburst might appear as a small, bright core, a concentrated patch of higher reflectivity, meaning more or larger droplets in a small area. Sometimes these cores bloom quickly, like a flower opening. Meteorologists watch radar loops, sequences of images over time, to see how precipitation evolves. A storm cell may strengthen, weaken, split, or drift. Rain shafts can move like slow curtains across the land. Radar also measures motion. Using a technique called Doppler radar, meteorologists can detect the movement of precipitation toward or away from the radar. This helps reveal wind patterns within storms. It can show rotation, outflow boundaries, and the shifting winds that influence rainbursts. But tonight, we hold this gently. We are not studying storms as threats. We are simply watching the atmosphere breathe. Radar allows meteorologists to see rain even when it is hidden inside clouds. It can detect precipitation at night, when the sky is dark. It can map rain over oceans and mountains. It can reveal the patchwork nature of showers, one town wet, another dry. On radar, the atmosphere becomes a living painting. Bands of rain stretch like brushstrokes. Storm cells appear as soft blobs drifting across the screen. The colors pulse gently as rain intensifies or fades. Meteorologists learn to read these shapes like a language of weather. A narrow line of echoes might indicate a cold front. A circular swirl might hint at a low pressure system. A sudden bright core might signal a brief downpour. And sometimes, radar reveals what the eye cannot. Virga evaporating before it reaches the ground, or rain falling high above, but not yet arriving at the surface. This is why radar is so useful for sudden rainfall. A rainburst can form quickly, and radar can capture its growth before it reaches you. It can show where the cloud is releasing its heaviest drops and how fast that rain is moving. It is like watching the sky's heartbeat from a distance. Tonight, imagine a meteorologist sitting in a quiet room, watching the radar screen glow softly. Outside, perhaps the air is still, but on the screen, small patches of rain are drifting like slow-moving lanterns. Colors shift gently, shapes expand and contract. A storm cell blooms, releases, fades. The radar is not dramatic. It is calm observation, a tool for seeing what is otherwise invisible. And in a way, it is poetic, because radar reminds us that rain is always happening somewhere, forming, falling, evaporating, drifting. The atmosphere is always moving water through its endless cycle. Weather radar is the language of that motion, a dreamy map of droplets in motion. And as you rest tonight, you can imagine those radar echoes, soft colors on a dark screen, quietly tracing the path of rain as it travels from cloud to earth, guided by wind, gravity, and time. Sometimes clouds align like avenues in the sky. If you've ever looked up on a day when the sky seems organized, when rows of clouds stretch across the horizon in long parallel lines, you've seen something quietly remarkable. The clouds are not scattered randomly. They are arranged as if the atmosphere has drawn soft lanes across the heavens. These formations are called cloud streets. Tonight, we drift down these dreamy highways. Cloud streets often form when the lower atmosphere is unstable, meaning warm air near the surface is rising into cooler air above. But they also require wind, a steady flow that guides the rising air into repeating patterns. Over large bodies of water, cloud streets are especially common. Cold air moving over warmer water creates strong upward motion. Warmth from the water heats the air just above it, and that air rises in narrow bands. Between these rising bands, air sinks. The result is a series of long, rolling circulations called convection rolls. Imagine the atmosphere like a gentle conveyor belt. Air rises in one band, forming clouds. Then it sinks in the next band, clearing the sky. Then it rises again, forming another cloud line. Over and over, stretching for miles. From above, it looks like a city grid of sky avenues. From below, it looks like endless lanes of cotton, aligned neatly toward the horizon. These cloud streets are not only beautiful, they also shape rainfall. We drift down these dreamy highways, where bursts of rain form along the way. Because within the rising bands of air, clouds can thicken. Moisture accumulates, droplets grow, and sometimes precipitation begins. The rain tends to fall beneath the cloud lanes, while the spaces between remain dry. This creates a pattern of patchwork rainfall, narrow corridors of showers separated by clear strips of sky. A traveller beneath might pass in and out of rain, like moving between rooms. One moment, the windshield is dry. The next, rain taps softly against glass. Then, suddenly, it clears again. Cloud streets can create sudden rainbursts because the rising motion within each band is concentrated. The air is lifted repeatedly along the same pathways. If moisture is abundant, the clouds along these lanes can become efficient rain producers. Sometimes the rain is light and brief. Sometimes it intensifies in a narrow strip, falling like a localized curtain. Cloud streets often form in the morning or early afternoon, when the temperature difference between surface and air above is strongest. Over oceans, they can form as cold air masses sweep across warmer water, creating long, persistent cloud bands. They can also form over land, especially when wind is steady and the atmosphere has just enough instability to organize convection into rows. Meteorologists see cloud streets as evidence of order in the atmosphere, not chaos, but structure. They show that air does not always rise randomly. Sometimes it rises in repeating patterns, shaped by wind shear and temperature gradients. In satellite images, cloud streets appear like long white ribbons, stretching for hundreds of miles. They are one of the most striking examples of the sky arranging itself into geometry. And within those ribbons, rain can be born. Tonight, imagine floating above such a scene, looking down at the earth through the gaps between cloud lanes. Sunlight shining through in parallel beams, the cloud streets drifting slowly, guided by steady wind. Within each lane, updrafts lift moisture, droplets gather. Some clouds begin to darken at their bases, heavy with water. Then, in narrow bands, rain begins to fall. Soft rain corridors, sky pathways of water. And because the lanes are long and continuous, rain can appear suddenly as you pass beneath them, like crossing an invisible border into a different part of the sky. Cloud streets remind us that the atmosphere has patterns, even when we cannot feel them. The wind shapes convection. Convection shapes clouds. Clouds shape rain. A simple chain of cause and effect, stretched into long parallel lines. Sometimes clouds align like avenues in the sky. And as you drift down these dreamy highways, you realize that even rain can have roads. Quiet paths drawn across the world, where the sky chooses to release its moisture in gentle bursts along the way. High above, fast winds shape the weather. Far beyond the height of storm clouds, far above where rain begins and ends, there are rivers of air moving at astonishing speed. These winds are not felt directly on the ground, but they influence the entire atmosphere, guiding weather systems like unseen hands. These high-speed currents are called the jet stream. Tonight, we follow the subtle reach of the jet stream. The jet stream forms near the boundary between warm air and cold air, often along the edges of large air masses. Because temperature differences create pressure differences, and pressure differences create wind, the atmosphere responds by flowing rapidly along these boundaries. The strongest jet streams often form high in the troposphere, near the tropopause, the boundary between the lower atmosphere and the calmer stratosphere above. Here, winds can race at over 100 miles per hour. Yet, from the ground, the world may feel still. The jet stream is like an invisible highway in the upper sky. It curves and meanders, shifting north and south in long waves. It can speed up and slow down. It can split into branches and rejoin. And as it moves, it influences storm tracks, cloud development, and rainfall patterns below. How can winds so high above affect sudden rain? The answer lies in lift. When the jet stream curves, it creates regions where air is encouraged to rise. In certain areas of the jet stream, particularly near the entrance and exit regions of jet streaks, where wind speed increases, the atmosphere experiences divergence aloft. Divergence means air is spreading outward at high altitude. When air spreads outward above, air from below must rise to replace it. This upward motion can encourage cloud formation and precipitation. In simple terms, the jet stream can gently pull air upward from below. This is why the jet stream is often linked to storm development. A small disturbance in the lower atmosphere may become a storm more easily if the jet stream above provides the right kind of support. It creates an environment where rising motion is favored, allowing clouds to grow and moisture to condense. Sometimes this leads to surprise showers. You may not see towering clouds building dramatically. The sky may simply thicken with layered clouds. Then rain begins, steady, sudden, or brief, seemingly without warning. The jet stream's influence can make rainfall feel like it arrives from nowhere. It also guides weather systems across continents. Storms tend to follow the jet stream's path, moving along its curves like leaves carried in a fast-moving current. When the jet stream dips southward, it can bring cooler air and storm systems into regions that were warm. When it shifts northward, it can allow warmth and calm to linger. In this way, the jet stream shapes seasons and storminess. But tonight, we hold it softly. We imagine the jet stream as a high, invisible ribbon moving quietly across the sky. Beneath it, clouds form and fade. Rain begins and ends. The jet stream does not create rain directly, but it arranges the conditions that allow rain to happen. It is like a conductor guiding an orchestra of air masses. High above, fast winds shape the weather, and below, the earth responds. When the jet stream encourages lift, clouds thicken, moisture condenses, droplets gather, precipitation begins. A sudden shower may fall in one place, while another stays dry. This is the jet stream's subtle reach. Tonight, as you rest, imagine looking upward through layers of sky. Low clouds drifting, mid-level clouds stretching like veils, and far above, unseen but powerful, the jet stream flowing like a silent river. It curves gently, carrying energy and motion across the world. And sometimes, when its path aligns just right, it invites the atmosphere below to rise and to release its hidden moisture as rain. Intensify ondobi, surprise shower, guided from above. A gentle reminder that even the highest winds, far beyond our sight, are part of the calm, interconnected story of weather. Some rain never touches ground, but its falling air still rushes down. At first glance, the sky may not look especially dramatic. A tall cloud drifts overhead, perhaps trailing faint grey streaks beneath it. Those streaks are precipitation, droplets or ice crystals falling from the cloud. But below, the air is dry. As the rain falls into that dry layer, something subtle begins. The droplets evaporate. Evaporation is a cooling process. When liquid water turns back into vapor, it absorbs heat from the surrounding air. That air becomes cooler, and cooler air becomes denser. Dense air sinks. And so, even though the rain itself may vanish before reaching the ground, the cooled air continues downward. This is the heart of a dry microburst. A microburst is a compact downdraft, a concentrated column of sinking air that descends from a cloud and spreads outward when it reaches the surface. In a dry microburst, much of the precipitation evaporates before touching the ground, making the event seem almost invisible. From below, you might see only faint streaks in the sky. The ground remains dry, and yet, suddenly, a strong gust of wind spreads outward at the surface. We explore these dry microbursts, the ghosts of rainfall. The process begins high within a storm cloud. Rain forms normally through droplet mergers or ice processes. Gravity pulls it downward, but beneath the cloud lies a deep layer of dry air. As the rain falls through this layer, evaporation cools the surrounding air rapidly. Cooling strengthens the downdraft. The air accelerates downward, guided by gravity and increased density. By the time it reaches the ground, it can spread outward in all directions, like water poured onto a flat surface. The rain itself may have mostly disappeared, but the air remembers it. This is why dry microbursts can create Sudden wind shifts without significant rainfall at the surface. The storm above has produced precipitation, but the ground receives mainly the wind that the evaporating rain created. It is a reminder that weather does not always reveal itself fully. Some processes are hidden between cloud and earth. Dry microbursts are more common in regions where the lower atmosphere is dry, such as arid or semi-arid climates. In these places, rain falling from high-based storms often evaporates before reaching the ground, creating strong cooling aloft. Yet even here, the mood of the atmosphere is not chaotic. The downdraft is a natural response to evaporation. It is the sky adjusting to temperature changes. The spreading winds that follow are the air redistributing itself, seeking balance once again. Sometimes you can see a faint veil beneath a cloud, virga, hinting that precipitation is falling but not arriving. A few minutes later, a sudden gust sweeps across the landscape. Leaves stir. Dust lifts, and then it passes, a ghost of rainfall. Dry microbursts show us that rain's influence extends beyond droplets touching the ground. Even evaporated rain cools and shapes the air. Even unseen precipitation can create motion. Tonight, imagine a tall cloud floating above a wide plain. From its base, soft streaks descend but fade halfway down. The ground remains dry. The sky appears calm. Then, a sudden cool breeze spreads outward, brushing across grass and trees. It is the echo of falling rain. The sky released moisture, even if the earth did not receive it. The atmosphere cooled itself in midair, and that cooling traveled downward as wind. Invisible rainstorms. Not dramatic, not destructive. Simply another quiet expression of physics in motion. Some rain never touches the ground, but its journey through dry air still matters. It leaves behind cooler breezes and shifting currents, reminders that even unseen water can guide the atmosphere's gentle dance between cloud and earth. When sudden rain touches earth, it begins a quiet journey underground. The first drops darken the surface. Dust settles. The scent of petrichor rises, that soft, earthy fragrance released when rain meets dry ground. Leaves glisten, pavement shines. But beneath these visible changes, something deeper begins. The soil awakens. A raindrop that falls from a cloud has traveled through layers of sky. But its journey is not complete when it lands. Instead, it seeps into the ground, guided by gravity and the tiny spaces between soil particles. This process is called infiltration. Soil is not solid in the way stone is solid. It is a mosaic of mineral grains, organic matter, air pockets, and microscopic channels. When rain arrives, water fills these spaces, pushing air gently aside. The ground absorbs what it can. In sudden rainbursts, the intensity of rainfall matters. If rain falls faster than the soil can absorb it, some water flows across the surface. But when rain is steady, or the soil is ready, much of it sinks inward. We trace the path of droplets into roots and roots into rest. Once inside the soil, water moves downward through gravity and sideways through capillary action, the same force that allows water to climb slightly upward in narrow spaces. The balance between these forces distributes moisture through different soil layers. Plant roots wait there. Roots do not drink water in the way we might imagine. Instead, water moves into root cells through osmosis, a gentle process where water travels from areas of higher concentration to lower concentration across cell membranes. Nutrients dissolved in the water move with it. Rain becomes nourishment. In forests and fields, sudden showers replenish soil moisture that plants depend on for growth. Leaves that transpire water vapor during the day are supported by the moisture drawn upward from the soil below. Rainfall restores this balance. Some of the water continues deeper, reaching groundwater reserves. Aquifers slowly refill over time, storing water for months or even years. Springs and wells depend on this quiet replenishment. Rain's underground journey is patient. It does not rush. It seeps, filters, moves through layers of sand, silt, and clay. Along the way, impurities are removed. The soil acts as a natural purifier, holding some minerals, releasing others. Sudden rain can feel dramatic at the surface, a quick drenching, a brief downpour. But beneath, the process is calm. Droplets spread outward through root networks. Microorganisms awaken in moist soil. Earthworms stir gently. The ground softens. In dry seasons, soil can become compacted and resistant to water at first. But as rain continues, the surface loosens, allowing deeper penetration. Each drop helps prepare the way for the next. And when the rain stops, the soil continues its quiet work. Water stored near the surface may evaporate slowly. Plants draw moisture upward through their stems, releasing it back into the air through transpiration. This completes another part of the water cycle: soil to leaf, leaf to sky. Rain nourishes the soil, not only by hydrating it, but by connecting earth and atmosphere. A droplet that fell suddenly from a cloud now rests among roots. It may become part of a leaf. It may flow into a stream weeks later. It may remain underground for years. Tonight, imagine a sudden rainburst soaking a quiet field. The surface glistens for a moment. Then, the water disappears downward, absorbed gently into the earth. Below the surface, roots extend like delicate fingers. They welcome the moisture. The soil holds it tenderly. Rain does not end at the ground. It continues inward, into roots, into seeds, into the slow breathing of the earth. And in that hidden journey, sudden rainfall becomes something enduring, a quiet gift carried below, sustaining life long after the last drop has fallen. The scent of rain on warm pavement has a name: petrichor. It arrives almost instantly when the first drops strike dry ground. A soft, earthy fragrance rises into the air, subtle yet unmistakable. It feels ancient, as though the earth itself has exhaled. Tonight, we breathe it in gently. Petrichor comes from natural oils released by plants during dry periods. These oils settle into soil and porous surfaces like stone and pavement. When rain falls, the impact of droplets traps tiny air bubbles at the surface. These bubbles rise and burst, releasing microscopic particles into the air, particles that carry the scent we recognize. Mixed within this fragrance is another quiet contributor, a compound called geosmin, produced by soil-dwelling bacteria. When rain disturbs the soil, geosmin is lifted into the air, adding a deep, earthy note to petrichor's perfume. The scent is strongest after long dry spells. Warm pavement, sun-baked sidewalks, rooftops holding the memory of heat. These surfaces amplify the experience. The first rain on warm ground releases scent quickly and richly, and sometimes, along with scent, comes steam. After sudden rainfall on a hot day, you may notice faint wisps rising from streets and stones. This is not smoke, and it is not fire. It is simply water meeting warmth. When rain falls onto a heated surface, some of the water evaporates almost immediately. Evaporation requires energy, and that energy comes from the heat stored in the pavement. As liquid water turns into vapor, it becomes visible for a moment, as tiny droplets suspended in cooler air just above the surface. This creates the illusion of steam. In truth, it is condensation, warm vapor rising and meeting slightly cooler air, forming a brief mist. The process is gentle and fleeting. Sudden rain cools surfaces quickly. Pavement that held the day's heat begins to lose it. The steam fades as temperatures equalize. The air becomes fresher. The scent softens. Street steam is a meeting of opposites: heat and water, dryness and saturation, sunlight and sudden shade. The visual effect can feel cinematic, wisps curling upward from asphalt, shimmering lightly in fading light. It is a reminder that the ground remembers the sun, even as the sky releases rain. Petrichor and steam together create a sensory transition. The world shifts from dry to wet, from warm to cool. The rain not only nourishes soil, but also refreshes air. There is something deeply calming about this shift. After a quick rainfall, the air often feels cleaner. Particles and dust have been washed from the sky. Surfaces gleam, colors deepen, reflections shimmer in puddles. Even in cities where concrete dominates, rain creates softness. The scent of petrichor can evoke memory of childhood summers, of distant storms, of evenings when rain arrived suddenly and left just as quickly. Scientists believe humans may be especially sensitive to geosmin because water has always meant survival. Our senses are tuned to notice it. Tonight, imagine standing on a quiet street just after a sudden rainburst. The pavement is still warm but cooling. Steam rises in thin veils. The air carries that earthy fragrance. You take a slow breath. The rain has passed, but its presence lingers in scent and mist. Street steam is not dramatic. It is simply the visible moment when water returns to air. Petrichor is not perfume made by flowers, but by soil and time. Together, they form a gentle epilogue to sudden rain. The sky has released its droplets. The ground has received them. The warmth has softened. And for a brief moment, the world feels newly washed, scented, cooled, quietly alive. The rain may have been sudden, but what follows is calm. Steam fades, scents linger, and the earth rests, refreshed beneath a sky that has finished its quiet work. Sometimes, sudden rain falls faster than the land can absorb. We approach this topic softly. Flash floods happen when intense rainfall overwhelms the natural pathways that usually carry water gently through soil, streams, and rivers. The word flash refers to the speed at which water levels can rise, sometimes within minutes after heavy rain begins. But even here, the atmosphere and landscape are simply interacting. When rain falls steadily, soil absorbs much of it through infiltration. Water seeps downward, filling pores and nourishing roots. But when rain falls quickly and in large amounts, as in a rainburst or strong storm cell, the ground may not be able to take it in fast enough. This is especially true in urban areas, where pavement and rooftops prevent infiltration. Water flows across surfaces instead of into them. It gathers in low areas, filling drains, streets, and channels. Landscapes shape water's flow. Hills guide water downward into valleys. Riverbeds collect runoff. Dry stream channels can fill quickly after intense rain, even if they were empty moments before. In arid regions, soil can become compacted and hard during long dry periods. When rain finally arrives, it may run off instead of soaking in, creating rapid surface flow. Flash flooding is not the rain misbehaving. It is water following gravity across a surface that cannot absorb it fast enough. Nature responds with quiet resilience. Over time, Landscapes adjust to patterns of rainfall. Riverbanks shift. Sediment moves. Vegetation grows in ways that stabilize soil. Floodplains exist for a reason. They are areas where rivers can spread during high flow, protecting narrower channels from strain. In natural systems, floodwaters often replenish wetlands, distribute nutrients, and reshape terrain gently over long timescales. Even in sudden events, water seeks balance. Rain falls, water flows, gravity guides it downhill. The intensity of sudden rainfall plays a key role. A brief but heavy downpour can deliver more water in 10 minutes than steady rain might in an hour. When this happens, the landscape experiences a temporary surge. Meteorologists study rainfall rates carefully, measuring how many millimeters fall per hour. When rates exceed the soil's infiltration capacity, runoff increases. But tonight, we focus not on danger, but on understanding. Flash floods remind us that water is powerful, not because it intends to be, but because it is abundant. When many droplets fall together in a short time, their combined flow becomes significant. Yet after the surge, calm returns. Water drains into rivers. Rivers carry it toward larger bodies of water. The landscape settles again. Communities adapt by building drainage systems, levees, and reservoirs to guide excess water safely. Engineers study terrain and rainfall patterns to design pathways that mimic natural flow. Nature itself shows resilience. Plants regrow, soil stabilizes, streams reshape gently. As you rest tonight, imagine a hillside receiving sudden rain. Water begins to flow along its surface, gathering into small rivulets. These rivulets join into a stream. The stream swells briefly, then gradually lowers as rain subsides. The movement is purposeful, but not angry. It is gravity and water in conversation. Flash floods occur when sudden rain overwhelms the immediate capacity of land to absorb it fast enough. But the cycle continues afterward. Infiltration resumes, evaporation begins, streams quiet. Water that rushed across streets may settle into rivers. Water that pooled in low areas may seep into soil once the intensity lessens. The atmosphere released moisture quickly. The land responded as best it could. Balance is restored in time. Even in powerful moments, nature is adaptive. And when the rain stops, the world slowly steadies. Puddles shrink, rivers recede, the air clears. Sudden rain may overwhelm briefly, but resilience is woven into landscapes. Water flows, reshapes, nourishes, and moves on. And eventually, calm returns, as it always does, beneath a sky that has finished its heavy sigh. We zoom gently down to the forest canopy. Above the forest floor, before rain ever touches soil, it meets a world of green architecture. Leaves layered upon leaves, branches crossing like quiet bridges, needles and moss forming soft cushions in the air. A forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a living roof, a wide breathing ceiling that catches weather and reshapes it. When sudden rain begins, the canopy is the first to listen. The first drops strike leaves with small, bright taps. Some bounce, some cling. Some roll along waxy surfaces in slow, glimmering paths. A rainburst may arrive quickly, but the canopy receives it in countless gentle interactions. Each leaf becomes a landing pad. Leaves are shaped to manage water. Many have smooth surfaces that encourage droplets to roll off. Some have tiny grooves that guide water toward the stem. Others have hairs or textures that hold moisture longer, allowing it to evaporate slowly. In the canopy, raindrops rarely fall straight through. They are caught, split, and shared. A single raindrop may land on a broad leaf, and divide into smaller beads. These beads may merge with others, growing heavier until gravity pulls them downward. This delayed fall is called throughfall, water that passes through the canopy to the ground below. But the canopy does more than delay rain. It redistributes it. Some rain drips from leaf tips like slow, rhythmic droplets. Some collects on branches and travels along bark. This water that runs down tree trunks is called stem flow. It guides moisture directly to the base of the tree, feeding roots with quiet efficiency. In this way, the forest canopy becomes a system of channels and reservoirs, a quiet architecture of rain absorption. During a sudden rainburst, this architecture becomes especially noticeable. The rain may be heavy above, but beneath the trees, the experience changes. The canopy softens the downpour. It filters the sound. It slows the water's descent. Under a dense forest, rain can feel like a gentle drizzle, even when the storm above is intense. The canopy is a natural umbrella. It also protects the soil. Sudden, heavy rain can compact bare earth, but leaves and branches reduce the force of impact. Droplets that reach the ground after passing through the canopy are often smaller and slower. They land gently, preventing erosion and helping the soil absorb water more calmly. Even the air beneath the canopy changes. The forest holds humidity. It stays cooler. During rainfall, the space under trees becomes a sheltered chamber of scent and softness. The smell of wet leaves rises. The sound of drops hitting foliage creates a layered whisper. Each tree participates. Pine needles catch rain differently than broad leaves. Needles create fine dripping patterns, releasing water in thin, steady streams. Broadleaf trees create larger drops that gather at tips before falling. Moss absorbs water like a sponge, holding moisture long after the rain ends. The canopy is not uniform. It is textured, varied, alive. Rain becomes 1,000 different rhythms depending on where it lands. Tonight, imagine yourself standing beneath a forest during a sudden shower. Above, the rain is falling hard, but the canopy catches it. You hear not a roar, but a soft percussion. Tap on leaf, drip from branch, a slow plop from a higher limb. The rain is transformed into music. The forest canopy also provides water to countless small lives. Insects drink from droplets. Birds bathe in leaf pools. Small plants beneath the canopy receive water gradually, protected from the full force of the rainburst. The canopy shares rain the way a careful hand shares food, distributing it gently rather than all at once. When the rain ends, the canopy continues to drip for minutes or hours. Even after the sky clears, the forest remains in conversation with water, releasing stored droplets slowly into the soil below. Sudden rain does not rush through a forest. It is caught, held, and softened. Tonight, as you rest, picture the canopy above you as a quiet green ceiling. Imagine raindrops landing, splitting, and rolling. Imagine water traveling down bark, collecting in moss, dripping from leaves like slow clockwork. A forest turns rainfall into patience, a quiet architecture of absorption. And in that softness, even a sudden rainburst becomes gentle, transformed by leaves into something slow, nourishing, and calm. We tune into the sleepy music of sudden rain hitting rooftops. There is a particular comfort in hearing rain from indoors. The world outside becomes distant, softened behind glass. Inside, you are sheltered, warm, still. And above you, rain begins to speak, not with words, but with rhythm. At first, the sound is scattered. A few drops strike the roof like tentative fingertips. They land unevenly, leaving small, distinct pings. If the roof is metal, the sound is bright and crisp. If it is tile, it is a soft tapping. If it is shingles, it becomes a muted patter, warm and steady. Then the pattern thickens. A rainburst arrives, and the roof becomes an instrument. Each raindrop is a note. Roof rattles and window pings create a lullaby from above that soothes even the busiest mind. The sound is layered. Rain on roof, rain on gutters, rain sliding down window panes, rain splashing into puddles below. Why does rain sound different on different surfaces? Because sound depends on impact and vibration. A raindrop hitting metal transfers energy quickly, creating a sharp, ringing tone. On softer surfaces, like wood or shingles, the energy is absorbed, producing a duller, quieter sound. Glass responds with a clean, delicate ping. Leaves respond with a whisper. Even the size of the raindrops matters. In sudden rainbursts, droplets are often larger at the beginning. Larger drops strike with more force, creating louder, deeper sounds. As the rain continues, smaller droplets join in, creating a finer, more continuous hiss. Together, they form rain's full soundtrack. Sometimes you can hear the rain change as it moves across the roof. Wind may push it to one side, making one corner louder than the other. The gutter may begin to overflow slightly, adding a steady trickle. Downspouts may gurgle softly as water flows through them. These small details are part of the lullaby. Rain is not one sound. It is many sounds at once, braided together. The roof becomes a stage where gravity performs. Each drop falls from cloud to house, from sky to shelter. The sound reminds you that you are safe beneath it. It is a comforting contrast. Chaos outside, calm inside. But even the rain itself is not chaotic. It is simply abundant. When rain hits a window, it behaves differently than on a roof. On glass, droplets spread into thin films, then gather again into beads. They travel downward in slow paths, merging with other drops, leaving trails behind them. Each movement creates faint tapping and sliding sounds. Window pings are softer than roof rattles, but they feel intimate, as if the rain is closer, almost whispering. Some people find these sounds soothing because they are repetitive, but not mechanical. They have rhythm, but not perfection. They are natural, unpredictable in small ways, yet consistent in the overall pattern. This kind of sound can quiet the mind. It masks sharper noises. It creates a steady background that allows thoughts to slow down. It invites breathing to deepen, muscles to relax, eyelids to grow heavy. The rain is doing what lullabies do, filling space with softness. Tonight, imagine lying in bed as sudden rain begins. At first, a few drops tap the roof. Then the sound expands into a steady cascade. The roof hums gently under the rainfall. The window clicks softly as droplets land and slide. Outside, the world is wet and shimmering. Inside, the sound wraps around you like a blanket. Even the busiest mind begins to settle. Rain does not demand attention, but it offers comfort. Each drop is a small reminder of the sky's cycle. Water returning to earth, then eventually returning again to air. And as you listen, the rhythm becomes hypnotic. Tap, 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 then a steady, soothing hush. A lullaby from above. A roof rattle and window ping symphony, guiding you gently towards sleep as the rain continues its quiet fall and your room becomes a calm harbour beneath the storm's soft music. Sudden rain reactivates hidden fragrances, from dry grass to dusty trails. There is a moment, just after the first drops fall, when the world seems to breathe differently. The air changes. It becomes richer, fuller, alive with scent. Even before puddles form, even before the ground is fully wet, fragrance rises as if the earth has been waiting for permission to speak. Tonight, we follow these scent trails like soft memories of sky and soil. When rain falls on dry land, it does more than cool the air and darken the surface. It stirs tiny particles that have been resting in quiet stillness. Dust, plant oils, soil compounds, and microscopic organisms all respond to moisture. The rain awakens them gently, like a hand brushing across sleeping ground. One of the most famous rain scents is petrichor, the earthy aroma released when water hits dry soil. Petrichor is created partly by oils secreted by plants during dry weather. These oils accumulate on rocks, dirt, and pavement. When rain arrives, droplets disturb the surface and release these oils into the air in fine aerosol form. The air becomes scented with the memory of dryness. But petrichor is not alone. Another key ingredient is geosmin, a compound produced by bacteria in the soil, especially actinomycetes. These bacteria thrive in dry conditions, and when rain arrives, geosmin is released into the air. Humans are incredibly sensitive to this smell. We can detect it even in very small amounts. Geosmin gives rain its deep, rich, soil-like scent. It smells like damp earth, like garden beds, like trails after summer heat. It feels grounding, familiar, almost comforting in a way that is hard to explain. Sudden rain reactivates these hidden fragrances quickly because the surface has been dry. Dry surfaces hold oils and dust loosely. The first impact of rain releases them in a burst, sending scent upward like a soft cloud of perfume. This is why the first minutes of rainfall often smell the strongest. As rain continues, the scents become diluted, the oils wash away, dust settles. But in the beginning, the aroma rises sharply, almost dramatically, though still gentle, still soothing. Rain also awakens plant scents. Dry grass, when moistened, releases a fresh green smell. Leaves that have been heated by sun release their own subtle oils when cooled. Pine needles release resinous notes. Herbs release sharp, clean fragrances that float through the air. Even bark has a scent when wet, woody, dark, deep. Rain on dust can smell like stone. Rain on sand can smell faintly metallic. Rain on clay can smell rich and heavy. Every landscape has its own fragrance palette, and rain acts like a brush dipping into hidden colors. We follow these scent trails like soft memories, because scent is tied to memory in a way sound and sight often are not. A sudden rain smell can transport you to another time. Childhood summers, long walks, quiet roads, evenings when storms arrived unexpectedly. The smell of rain can feel like nostalgia. It can also feel like relief. After long heat, rain cools the world and softens dryness. The scent that rises is the earth's response, a quiet thank you, an exhale after waiting. In deserts, the smell after rain is especially powerful. Dry soil holds oils and minerals for long periods. When moisture finally arrives, the scent can fill the air intensely, as if the land is singing. In forests, rain smells like moss and leaves and deep soil. In grasslands, it smells like green life returning. In cities, it smells like pavement and dust and warm stone. But no matter where you are, the scent is a message. Water has arrived. Tonight, imagine walking along a dusty trail, just as sudden rain begins. The first drops strike the ground. Dust rises briefly, then settles. The scent blooms in the air, earthy, green, sweet, and mineral. You breathe it in slowly. It feels like the earth is telling you a story, one written in soil and sky. The scent is not loud. It is subtle, but unmistakable. Rain wakes the world's fragrances because moisture unlocks chemistry. It releases oils, stirs bacteria, and lifts particles into the air. It transforms dry surfaces into scented landscapes. And then, as rain continues, the scent softens again, becoming part of the background. A quiet perfume of nature, a soft memory trail. Sudden rain does not only wet the earth, it awakens it. And in the air, the earth's scents rise gently, reminding you that beneath every dry surface, there is life waiting to breathe again. From asphalt to leaves, the sound and feeling of rain changes. Rain is the same water, the same droplets falling from clouds, yet it never feels exactly the same in two different places. The environment below shapes the experience, changing the sound, the scent, the rhythm, and even the way the air feels after the rain has passed. Tonight, we drift between urban streets and forest paths. In the city, rain often arrives with a sharper voice. Drops strike concrete and glass with crisp taps. They hit metal railings, car roofs, street signs. Each surface reflects sound differently, creating a layered percussion. Rain in the city can sound like 1,000 small instruments playing at once. Gutters begin to run quickly. Drainage systems gurgle. Water rushes along curbs in narrow streams. Puddles form in dips in the pavement. Reflections of streetlights shimmer in the wet. Urban rain feels structured. The water is guided by hard surfaces. It flows in predictable channels, collecting and moving quickly because asphalt does not absorb much moisture. The city becomes a network of little rivers along sidewalks, down stairways, into drains. The scent in the city is also distinct. Rain releases petrichor from dust and pavement, but it also mixes with urban smells, warm stone, faint metallic notes, distant exhaust softened by moisture. The air feels cooler quickly because the rain evaporates and reflects less heat once surfaces are wet. In the wild, rain feels softer. In a forest, drops strike leaves and needles before reaching the ground. The canopy catches rain and breaks it into smaller drips. The sound becomes layered and muffled, more like whispering than tapping. The forest floor absorbs water gently. Soil drinks it in. Moss holds it like a sponge. Fallen leaves collect droplets, making tiny pools that glimmer in dim light. Rain in the wild feels less rushed. Water has many places to go. It seeps, spreads, rests. Streams rise slowly. The ground darkens in patches. The scent becomes rich with soil and plant oils. Rain in the wild often feels like a deepening quiet. Birds may pause. The forest becomes hushed except for the sound of droplets. The air becomes cool and damp, heavy with green fragrance. In open landscapes like fields or deserts, rain has yet another mood. In grasslands, the rain feels like soft tapping on endless blades. In deserts, it can smell intensely earthy and mineral-rich, as dry soil releases long-held scents. But tonight, we focus on the contrast between city and forest. In the city, rain is immediate. It hits hard surfaces and announces itself. It creates fast-moving runoff. It forms puddles quickly. The sound is sharper, more rhythmic, more metallic. In the wild, rain is filtered. It is slowed by leaves. It is softened by soil. It becomes a gentle drip long after the storm ends. Even the feeling of rain on skin changes. In the city, raindrops may feel cooler because buildings create wind tunnels, guiding air currents. In the wild, trees reduce wind, making rain feel calmer and more vertical. The light changes differently too. City rain reflects neon and streetlights. The world glows in wet colors. Forest rain dims the world, creating soft shadows and deep greens. Rain is always the same process in the sky: condensation, droplets, gravity, but it becomes a different story when it reaches the ground. Tonight, imagine walking through both worlds. First, a city street. Rain begins suddenly, striking rooftops and sidewalks. Cars hiss as tires move through puddles. Reflections ripple. The air smells of wet stone. Then, a forest path. Rain falls through leaves, dripping softly. The scent of moss rises. The ground absorbs water quietly. Everything feels hushed and sheltered. Two different soundtracks, two different textures. One rainfall, rain in the city and rain in the wild, remind us that weather is not only about the sky. It is also about what the sky meets. Water falling from clouds becomes music, scent, and movement depending on the world below. And in both places, rain brings the same gift: cooling, cleansing, renewal. Whether it strikes asphalt or leaves, it is still the sky returning its hidden water to earth. And in that return, both city and wilderness become softer, calmer, and ready for rest. Just as rain can arrive suddenly, it can vanish softly. There is a moment during rainfall when you begin to notice a change. The steady rhythm on the roof becomes lighter. The drops space themselves farther apart. The sound softens from a full hush to a scattered tapping. Without announcement, the rain begins to withdraw. We explore how clouds lighten, winds shift, and the sky returns to stillness. Rain ends not because it is finished, but because the balance that created it has shifted again. Inside the cloud, the processes that formed droplets begin to slow. Updrafts weaken, downdrafts spread outward and cool the lower air. Moisture that once gathered quickly is now more dispersed. A storm cell, for example, has a life cycle. In its early stage, rising air feeds the cloud, building it upward. In its mature stage, rain falls heavily as both rising and sinking air coexist. But eventually, the sinking air, the downdraft, becomes dominant. It cuts off the supply of warm rising air that sustained the cloud. Without lift, the cloud cannot maintain its thickness. It begins to thin. From below, you might notice the cloud base becoming lighter in color. What was once dark grey shifts to softer shades. Patches of brightness appear around the edges. The rain grows lighter, not in a dramatic stop, but in a gradual easing. Wind often changes during this transition. The gusts that accompanied heavy rain begin to calm. Cooler air settles. The atmosphere redistributes itself quietly. The sudden energy that produced the burst is now spent. Rain can also end when a frontal boundary passes. As a front moves through, it lifts warm air and produces precipitation. But once the boundary has moved beyond your location, the lifting decreases. The clouds drift onward. The rainfall tapers. In warm rain processes, as droplets fall and the cloud loses moisture, there is simply less water left to release. The cloud may dissolve into smaller fragments or flatten into a thin veil. Sometimes the ending feels almost unnoticed. You look up and realize it has been several seconds since the last drop fell. The silence after rain can feel profound. Birds resume their calls. Leaves drip gently, finishing what the cloud began. The air feels cooler, clearer. Colors seem deeper, rinsed by water. Even the scent changes again. The rich aroma of fresh rain softens into something lighter. Damp earth, wet leaves, clean pavement. The world feels reset. Just as rain can arrive suddenly, it can vanish softly. There is no curtain call, no final crash, only a fading rhythm. The sky returns to stillness not because it is empty, but because it has redistributed its moisture. Clouds may linger in thinner forms. Sunlight may begin to filter through, sending pale beams across damp ground. This is the atmosphere's way of exhaling fully. The burst has passed. The energy has eased. The water has fallen. In some cases, a few lingering drops continue to fall long after the main rain has ended. These are droplets shaken loose from leaves or released from the final edges of clouds. They feel like afterthoughts, gentle reminders. As you rest tonight, imagine listening carefully as rain begins to fade. The once steady pattern becomes irregular. Tap, pause, tap, then silence. You notice the absence more than the presence. The world seems larger without the curtain of sound. Clouds drift slowly apart, revealing patches of pale sky. The horizon brightens. The air feels washed and calm. Rain does not always end abruptly. Often, it dissolves into quiet, leaving behind a softened landscape and a sky that feels lighter. And in that lightness, there is peace. The rain arrived with purpose. It released what it carried. Now it rests, and so does the sky. After a burst of rain, mist sometimes lingers. The downpour may have ended. The clouds may be thinning. And yet, the air still feels full, not with falling drops, but with something softer, suspended, almost weightless. We walk through it gently. Mist after rain often forms because the air near the ground remains moist and cool. When rain falls, it increases humidity significantly. If the air temperature drops close to the dew point, the temperature at which air becomes saturated, water vapor can condense into tiny droplets suspended in the air. These droplets are so small they float rather than fall. The result is mist. It can appear as a faint veil rising from fields, or as a low cloud hugging hillsides. In cities, it may drift between buildings, catching light in soft halos around street lamps. In forests, it weaves through trees, wrapping trunks and branches in quiet breath. Leftover mist is like a cloud fallen to earth. During heavy rain, evaporation cools the surface. As the rain stops and the air stabilizes, moisture near the ground may linger at high concentrations. If winds are calm, that moisture does not disperse quickly. Instead, it condenses into visible haze. Sometimes the mist rises from the ground itself. Warm surfaces that were heated before the rain can release water vapor after the rain cools them. As that vapor meets cooler air above, condensation occurs in thin layers close to the earth. This creates the appearance of steam rising gently from streets or fields. It is not smoke. It is simply water returning to air. Mist can also form when rain-cooled air settles into low-lying areas. Valleys, riverbanks, and open fields collect cooler air more easily. With moisture still abundant, condensation occurs quickly. The atmosphere, once active with falling rain, now rests in suspended quiet. After-rain haze softens edges. Trees appear slightly blurred. Distant buildings fade into gentle outlines. Light becomes diffused, scattering through countless microscopic droplets. The world feels dreamlike, as though wrapped in a translucent shawl. This mist is fragile. A slight breeze can disperse it. A small rise in temperature can dissolve it, but while it lingers, it changes the mood entirely. The soundscape shifts as well. Without falling rain, the air grows still. The only sounds may be dripping water, distant birds, or the faint rustle of leaves. Mist absorbs sound gently, making everything feel closer and quieter. Walking through after-rain haze can feel like stepping inside a cloud. Tiny droplets settle on hair and skin. The air feels cool and damp. Each breath carries the scent of wet earth and leaves. It is neither raining nor dry. It is something in between, a resting state of the atmosphere. Meteorologically, this is simply saturation near the surface, but emotionally, it feels like calm embodied. The burst of rain has ended, but its presence remains in the air itself. Mist often fades as sunlight returns. As the ground warms, the droplets evaporate, rising invisibly once more. The haze thins, the world sharpens. But for a time, everything feels hushed and softened. Tonight, imagine standing in a meadow just after rain. The grass is wet. A thin veil of mist rises and drifts. The sky above is clearing, pale and wide. You walk forward slowly, and the mist parts gently around you. It feels like the earth is breathing out. Leftover mist is the atmosphere's quiet afterthought, a reminder that even after rain has finished falling, water still lingers between sky and soil. A cloud fallen to earth, a sleepy breath wrapping the world. And in that breath, there is no urgency, only softness, only rest, only the gentle in-between where rain has ended, but moisture still holds the air in its calm embrace. Every puddle holds a memory of the sky. After rain has passed, the world does not return immediately to what it was before. The air may clear, but the ground still glistens. The earth carries water in small pockets, in shining surfaces, in little mirrors scattered across sidewalks and soil. Tonight, we look down gently. Puddles are rain's quiet signature, the leftover evidence of a cloud's release. They collect in dips in the land, in shallow depressions where water gathers naturally. Some are only thin films, barely enough to reflect light. Others become deeper pools, holding the shape of the sky, like a small, temporary lake. Rain falls from above, but its story continues below. A puddle is not just water, it is atmosphere made visible. Each drop that landed there travelled through layers of air, shaped by temperature, wind, and gravity. It began as vapor. It condensed into droplets. It merged, grew heavy, and fell. Now it rests on earth, still and quiet. In a puddle, the sky pauses. We look at the stories left behind by rain. Some puddles hold ripples for a while, stirred by lingering drips from leaves or gutters. Others remain perfectly smooth, reflecting the world with glass-like clarity. In them, streetlights become stars. Tree branches become ink drawings. Clouds become soft paintings. The reflection is not separate from reality. It is simply the sky looking back at itself. Still, water reflects because its surface is smooth enough to act like a mirror. When light hits it, it bounces back at an angle, carrying the image of whatever lies above. The calmer the surface, the clearer the reflection. This is why puddles are so mesmerizing after rain. They offer a second sky beneath your feet. Even the smallest puddle can hold an entire cloud. Sometimes the reflected sky is brighter than the real one because the puddle captures light differently. It can turn a grey day into a luminous portrait. It can frame a patch of blue in a world that still feels damp and muted. Puddles also reveal wind. A slight breeze sends ripples across the surface, breaking the reflection into shimmering fragments. The sky becomes abstract, scattered into moving lines of light. The puddle reminds you that air is still moving, even after the storm has ended. Puddles hold sound too. When a late drop falls into them, it creates a soft plop, followed by expanding rings. Those rings are waves, energy traveling outward through the water. The puddle becomes a quiet instrument, responding to the smallest disturbance. But most of the time, puddles are peaceful. They sit patiently, holding their borrowed sky. They are temporary, of course. Over time, puddles disappear. Sunlight warms them. Wind carries vapor away. The water evaporates, returning invisibly to the atmosphere. In this way, puddles are not an ending, but a pause in the cycle. Rain becomes still water. Still water becomes vapor. Vapor becomes cloud again. Every puddle is a moment of rest between movements. Puddles also nourish life in subtle ways. Birds drink from them. Insects gather near them. Plants at the edges absorb moisture as it seeps into the soil. Even in cities, puddles feed the world quietly. Tonight, imagine walking after a sudden rainburst. The street is wet and shining. You step carefully around a puddle, then pause and look into it. In the reflection, you see clouds drifting slowly. Perhaps the sky is clearing. Perhaps sunlight is returning. The puddle holds that transition, capturing the atmosphere's shifting mood. A memory of rain, a memory of cloud, a memory of the sky's release. And as you watch, you realize the puddle is like a small planet, a round mirror holding a universe of light and motion. Still water reflects our quiet skies because stillness is a kind of clarity. When everything settles, the world becomes easier to see. Puddles remind us of that. They invite you to slow down, to notice, to linger. Every puddle holds a memory of the sky, and when you look down into one, you are not only seeing water, you are seeing the atmosphere resting. You are seeing rain's story continuing, quietly, in reflection. A small mirror of the heavens, left behind for anyone who pauses long enough to notice. We end with an invitation. The next time rain falls fast, the next time a sudden burst of water arrives from a sky that seemed calm only moments before, perhaps you will remember what you have learned tonight. Not as a lesson, but as a gentle understanding. Sudden rain is not an interruption. It is a process completing itself. For hours, maybe days, moisture has been moving invisibly through the air. Warmth has lifted vapor upward. Cooling has gathered it into clouds. Droplets have merged and grown. Ice crystals have formed and melted. Air has risen and fallen. Updrafts and downdrafts weaving through the sky like quiet currents in an unseen ocean. And then, when the balance shifted, the rain came. A moment of release. A soft sigh from the atmosphere. When rain arrives quickly, it can feel like the world has changed in an instant. But in truth, the sky has been preparing patiently. The rainburst is simply the final note of a long, gentle song. Perhaps next time you will notice the signs. The heavy air, the hush, the way clouds thicken and darken at their bases. The stillness that comes before the first drop. And when the rain begins, you might hear it differently. Not as disruption, but as rhythm. Not as inconvenience, but as water returning home. Rain is the sky giving back what it carried. It is gravity guiding droplets downward. It is condensation becoming visible. It is the atmosphere restoring balance between heat and moisture, between vapor and liquid, between above and below. We have drifted through many quiet truths tonight. We have watched droplets form, merge, freeze, melt, and fall. We have wandered along fronts where air masses meet. We have followed outflow boundaries, cloud streets, and the subtle influence of high winds far above. We have listened to roof rattles and window pings. We have breathed in petrichor and walked through mist that lingered like a cloud resting on earth. All of it has been part of one story, the story of sudden rain. The next time rain falls fast, you might imagine it as a gift. A brief washing of the world, a cooling touch on warm pavement, a sound that turns busy streets into lullabies, a scent that wakes old memories in soil and grass. Rain does not ask permission. It arrives when the atmosphere is ready, but it also leaves behind calm, in the air, in the light, in the way the world glows afterward, a quiet gift. Even a short burst of rain can change everything. It can nourish roots. It can fill puddles that mirror the sky. It can soften dust into mud and mud into life. It can cool the air and make breathing feel easier. It can slow the pace of the day for a moment, reminding us that nature moves in cycles, not schedules. We end with this invitation to see the next sudden rain not as an interruption, but as the sky's soft sigh, a moment of release, a moment of balance restored. When rain falls fast, it is the atmosphere exhaling. It is water completing its loop. It is the cloud letting go of what it can no longer hold. And afterward, the world becomes quieter. Drips continue from leaves. Mist may rise from the ground. Puddles reflect the clearing sky. Then slowly, even the last traces fade. The rain returns to air. The air returns to stillness. The sky returns to calm. And you, listener, can return to rest. Because tonight, you have traveled through the hidden mechanics of rain and found that even sudden weather is not harsh. It is gentle physics. It is patient preparation. It is the soft rhythm of a planet breathing. So the next time rain falls quickly outside your window, let it soothe you. Let it remind you that the sky is always moving, always balancing, always quietly caring for the earth. A sudden rainburst is not a disturbance. It is the sky whispering softly that everything is cycling and everything is returning home. And as we reach the end of our exploration, I hope this gentle journey through rain's sudden rhythms brought you a sense of calm. That maybe, somewhere along the way, your thoughts began to slow and your breathing softened, like clouds dissolving quietly into night. Maybe you'll hear the next burst of rain with a little more wonder. Maybe you'll remember how even storms can soothe, how the sky is never rushing, never angry, only balancing, releasing, and returning to stillness. And perhaps the next time the world darkens briefly and raindrops arrive without warning, you'll feel it not as interruption, but as comfort, a soft reminder that nature is always moving in gentle cycles, always drifting toward calm again. If you'd like to support these calming weather journeys, feel free to like or subscribe. Your presence here means more than you know, and it helps more sleepy travelers find their way to this quiet place. For now, you can rest. Let your body sink deeper into comfort. Let your mind float lighter and lighter. And if rain is falling outside, let it carry you like a lullaby. Good night, peaceful dreams, calm skies to you.